is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello, welcome to CGTN. This is our special coverage on the new CPC leadership. Live from Beijing, I'm Pan Deng.
I'm Li Dongning. Well, the 20th CPC National Congress has concluded yesterday. It's elected the 20th Central Committee and the 20th Central Committee for Discipline Inspection.
Indeed, and the Party Congress has also passed the resolutions on the report submitted by the 19th CPC Central Committee and approved the report on the work of the 19th CPC Central Commission for Discipline Inspection. An amendment to the CPC Constitution was also adopted.
Right, and the newly elected 20th CPC Central Committee is holding its first plenum today.
And the plenary session will elect members of the Political Bureau of the 20th CPC Central Committee and its Standing Committee.
And also the members of the Standing Committee will meet Chinese and foreign journalists in Beijing at around 12 p.m. And of course, we'll bring you live pictures for the event.
And we're also live streaming on our social media platforms. But first, let's bring in Zhongshi for the latest in world news. Hello, Zhongshi.
Han Deng, thank you. In other news we're following for you this hour, Giorgia Meloni has been sworn in as Italian Prime Minister. On Saturday, the far-right leader promises to work closely with her international partners despite the divergent views of her coalition allies. She's the first woman to head an Italian government. And CGTN's Alex Fraser has more from Milan.
Italy's most right-wing government since the Second World War has been sworn in. Giorgia Meloni took the oath in front of Italian President Sergio Mattarella to become Italy's first ever female Prime Minister. One by one, new members of her cabinet were called to swear their oath to Italy's constitution. The cabinet includes politicians from all three of the right-wing coalition's member parties, Brothers of Italy, the League and Forza Italia. The coalition appeared to be in a precarious position earlier in the week following infighting between partners and controversial comments from former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, where he said he was still friends with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Ministerial appointments had to be carefully balanced in order to keep rival factions together as one government. Antonio Tajani, former President of the European Parliament and member of Forza Italia, will serve as Foreign Minister as well as Deputy Prime Minister. The appointment signals that Meloni is prepared to make overtures towards Brussels on foreign policy. Before the election, criticism was levelled at her and the coalition, saying it would be Eurosceptic and pro-Russian. The other Deputy Prime Minister, Matteo Salvini, who's leader of the League, will also act as Minister for Transport and Infrastructure. Giancarlo Giorgetti is the new Finance Minister. He served in the previous coalition headed by Mario Draghi as Minister for Economic Development. The government will face immediate economic challenges, inflation and energy crisis, and will need to approve a budget to send to Brussels before December. Alex Fraser, CGTN, Milan.
The former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has returned to the UK amid speculation he may be preparing to enter the race to become the next resident of 10 Downing Street. There are reports he cut short a holiday after Liz Truss's resignation this week. And we get this report from CGTN's Catherine Drew.
Jetting back from the Caribbean, Boris Johnson has returned to the UK with friends saying he's ready to enter the race for his old job. Johnson and other candidates have until Monday afternoon to get the backing of 100 MPs to be in the running. Johnson's possible return to frontline politics is dividing the Conservatives, with some claiming he is the only leader to have won a mandate following his victorious 2019 general election.
Thank you.
Others are appalled, saying he resigned just 6 weeks ago following a series of scandals and will be returning as a parliamentary committee begins taking evidence over allegations he lied to Parliament over lockdown parties in Downing Street.
I don't think we can ignore this issue of the Committee on Standards and Privileges. If someone thinks otherwise, then they can come out and explain how you could be Prime Minister and give testimony and potentially face a sanction. But I haven't heard that explanation, and we have got to go forward, not go back and end up with the Groundhog Day, if you like, of Partygate again.
I know about the cost of living and how frightening it can be.
The first candidate to officially declare is Penny Mordaunt. former minister who came third in the race when Johnson left office in July. The third candidate, and the only one so far to have secured the backing of over 100 MPs, is Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor whose resignation triggered an exodus from Boris Johnson's cabinet that led to his resignation. Whoever takes the keys to Downing Street faces multiple challenges, including ending the financial turbulence caused by Liz Truss's now aborted tax-cutting and spending plans, a cost of living crisis, and salvaging the reputation of the Conservatives after a period of unprecedented upheaval. The new PM will be the fifth Conservative Prime Minister in the last 6 years. Catherine Drew, CGTN.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump was issued an order on Friday to testify and provide documents to the House of Representatives committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riot. The committee said it had sent a subpoena to Trump requiring him to submit documents to the panel by November the 4th and appear for deposition testimony beginning on or about 10 days after. Thousands of Trump supporters attacked the Capitol on January the 6th, 2021, after Trump delivered a speech at a rally near the White House. 5 people, including a police officer, died during or shortly after the riot. More than 140 police officers were injured, and the Capitol suffered millions of dollars in damage. Iranian state news reports that the country's foreign minister claimed he received a message from the U.S. expressing their hastiness to reach a nuclear deal with Iran. Hussein Amir Abdullahian made the claims 3 days ago and said that the IAEA's accusations against Iran's nuclear program should be resolved before any agreement. When asked about U.S. officials' comments saying nuclear negotiations were off the U.S. agenda, the foreign minister said the U.S. is contradictory, as they were in a hurry to reach an agreement in their recent message. Iran signed the nuclear deal with world powers in July 2015. However, Washington quit the agreement and reimposed unilateral sanctions on Tehran. Tens of thousands of protesters in 6 German cities gathered on Saturday to demand a more just distribution of government funds to deal with rising energy prices and living costs and a faster transition away from fossil fuels. Protesters marched in Berlin, Dusseldorf, Hanover, Stuttgart, Dresden, and Frankfurt am Main. Germany's parliament on Friday approved a rescue package equivalent to $195 billion aiming to protect companies and households from the impact of soaring energy prices. Inflation in September hit its highest level in more than a quarter of a century, driven by higher energy costs. And these are the world stories we're following for you this hour. Stay with CGTN. Our special coverage with Dong and Pandong will return in just a moment.
Well, the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China has concluded in Beijing. Delegates elected a new party central committee. Zhao Yunfei tells us more about this.
Xi Jinping presided over the closing session.
There are 4 items on the agenda for today's session. First, electing a new CPC Central Committee and a new Central Commission for Discipline Inspection. Second, passing a resolution on the report of the 19th CPC Central Committee. Third, passing a resolution on the work report of the 19th Central Commission for Discipline Inspection. And fourth, passing a resolution on the amendment to the CPC Constitution. The number of people attending today's session exceeds half of the delegates who should be present and those who were specially invited. It is in accordance with the provisions of election methods of the session, and the election can be held.
Delegates give their final approval to a new CPC Central Committee with 205 members and 171 alternates. And they elected 133 members of the new Central Commission for Discipline Inspection. Delegates to the Congress also passed a resolution approving the report of the 19th CPC Central Committee. The resolution says delegates believe the theme expounded in the report is the soul of the Congress. It applauded the achievements in the decades since the party's 18th National Congress. 3 major events were highlighted: the centenary of the Communist Party of China, the new era of socialism with Chinese characteristics, completion of building a moderately prosperous society in all respects, and eradicating absolute poverty. It says the party must uphold Xi Jinping's core position on the party's Central Committee and in the party as a whole, and fully implement Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. The resolution says the report emphasized that national security is the bedrock of national rejuvenation, and social stability is a prerequisite for building a strong and prosperous China. The report stresses resolute pursuit of a holistic approach to national security, promoting national security in all areas and stages of the work of the party and the country. It urges improvement of the national security system, strengthened capacity for safeguarding national security, enhanced public security governance, and an improved social governance system. The resolution says the report establishes the goal of uniting and leading the people of all ethnic groups in the country to build a powerful modern socialist country in all respects and to promote the national rejuvenation through Chinese modernization. The Congress stresses that the policy of one country, two systems is a great innovation of socialism with Chinese characteristics. It has proven to be the best institutional arrangement for ensuring sustained prosperity and stability in Hong Kong and Macau after their return to the motherland. It stresses the adherence to the One China principle and the 1992 consensus and implementing the party's overall policy for resolving the Taiwan question in the new era. The Congress stresses that the achievement of the goals for the centenary of the People's Liberation Army in 2027 and more quickly elevating the People's Armed Forces to world-class standards are a strategic task for building a modern socialist country in all respects. To this end, the party must apply Xi Jinping's thinking on strengthening the military, implement the military strategy for the new era, and maintain the party's absolute leadership over the People's Armed Forces. The 20th National Congress also passed a resolution approving an amendment to the Constitution of the Communist Party of China, which takes effect immediately. The resolution says Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era is the latest achievement in adapting Marxism to the Chinese context and a guide to actions for the entire party and all the Chinese people to strive for the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. The Constitution affirms the basic socialist economic system as a pillar of the country's socialist system with Chinese characteristics. The resolution says the party must work on promoting common prosperity for all, applying the new development philosophy, and fostering a new pattern of development that is focused on the domestic economy and features positive interplay between domestic and international economic flows. The resolution confirms the goal of building China into a great modern socialist country. It also agrees to add to the Constitution the goal of creating a socialist legal system with Chinese characteristics and development of whole process people's democracy. It adds more requirements to improve the party building, and it has emphasized the importance of self-revolution and fighting corruption. The resolution says the party must constantly strengthen its ability to purify, improve, reform, and excel itself. It must uphold firmly the authority and centralized, unified leadership of the Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at the core. After all items on the agenda were completed, Xi Jinping delivered a speech.
The National Congress is opened successfully with efforts of all delegates. It has achieved the purpose of unifying thoughts, strengthening confidence, clarifying the direction, and raising spirits. We're holding our banner high, boosting cohesion, and forging ahead in unity.
He said the report of the 19th Central Committee reviewed the work of the past 5 years and progress made in the last decade. The report answered the questions of what are the characteristics of Chinese modernization and made clear its requirements and established the guidelines and directions for the future development of the country. He also commented on the work report of the 19th Central Commission for Discipline Inspection, highlighting the importance of strict supervision of the party. He said that the party has to reinforce self-revolution and strongly oppose corruption. Xi Jinping said the amendments to the party constitution represent of the party's theoretical, practical, and institutional innovations and has made clear demands for party building. He said he is confident about the party's future.
100 years of achievements are incomparably brilliant, and the century-old party is flourishing. We have the confidence and ability to create new and greater miracles to impress the world in a new journey of the new era. The whole party should be closely united around the Central Committee, hold high the banner of socialism with Chinese characteristics, proceed with historical confidence, enhance historical initiatives, dare to struggle, dare to win, work hard, forge ahead, unite and lead the people of all ethnic groups to achieve the goals set by the 20th National Congress.
Xi Jinping underscored people-centered development, saying the nation is composed of people, and people are all that matter to the nation. He reminded all delegates to shoulder responsibility, accept supervision from the people, support the party's leadership, and spare no efforts to make contributions to the party and the people's livelihoods. Based on decades of exploration in how to best govern the nation, the CPC has mapped out a clear and unique blueprint for China, a country with more than 1.4 billion people. The CPC's practices have also given a clue to the world on how to resolve disputes and work towards a better future. Zhao Yunfei, CGTN, Beijing.
And now for more on the 20th CPC National Congress and also the first plenary session, let's turn to our colleague Zhao Yunfei, who is joining us from the Great Hall of the People.
That's right. Yunfei, we just watched your extensive and detailed report on the closing session of the 20th CPC National Congress. And we know that you've been following this crucial political gathering throughout the week. Remind us the highlights so far.
Yes, Tony and Pandeng, it's been a very important political gathering here. We've been working from the Great Hall of the People for over a week and witnessed this kind of great political gathering. This is something that happened really once every 5 years. Now, the first plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee is now underway, and the new Central Committee was elected by the 20th CPC National Party Congress, which concluded yesterday. Now, the tenure of the new Central Committee has already started. According to the report by the previous Central Committee, the report, Xi Jinping covered many different perspectives on the future development of the party, especially the plans for the next 5 years. And it sets agenda on multiple fronts, from boosting innovation to improving people's livelihood, from sustainable growth to high-quality development. Xi Jinping said that the CPC at the closing session of the 20th CPC National Congress, and he said that the CPC must have the courage to fight and have the mettle to win. Now, the future development of the party really relies on a very strong leadership of the party. Now currently, as the ongoing first plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee will elect a standing committee, a political bureau of the Central Committee, and then a standing committee of the political bureau of the Central Committee, and then the General Secretary of the Central Committee, and then the standing committee of the political bureau of the 20th CPC Central Committee will meet the press at about 4 GMT, and it will be a highly anticipated event coming up. Now back to you.
Thank you very much, our reporter Zhao Yunfei at Great Hall of the People.
Right, and once the members of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the 20th CPC Central Committee are elected at the first plenary session, they will meet the press at around 12 p.m. Beijing time or 400 GMT. And for more on that, our reporter Dong Xue is joining us from the Great Hall of People. Dong Xue, hello there. So what can we expect from this event?
Hello, Doni and Panda. I'm standing at the Golden Hall inside of the Great Hall of the People in the Chinese capital, Beijing. And for those of you who've been closely monitoring on China's political event, you will know this is the place where, the meetings and the conferences are being held by high-level officials here in China. And for today's occasion, we're here to expect the China's top leadership lineup. As you can see behind me, there are about 300 seats being lined up. These seats are lined up for journalists who will be joining us later for the press conference, both from domestic and international media outlets. And earlier, I get to talk to some of them. They said their experiences and expectations for this Congress. Some said, for them, it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience covering China's political event. For them, it's still a learning process. Get to pick up how the system operates here and how it differs from theirs. And also for those who've traveling all the way from outside China, they said that besides covering the event, it's also a rare opportunity for them to pick up, Chinese culture and try get to these tasty Chinese food. Well, for journalists waiting here, including me, knowing of course that the CPC is the biggest political party in the world and the ruling party and also the most important political party here in China, you will be witnessing something very important about to happen in history. And for today's occasion, I feel like it's beyond important. As I mentioned earlier, we're here to expect China's top leadership lineup, known as the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC. Well, the number of this group varies from 3 to 9 historically, and their main tasks will be turning guidelines into specific policies and actions in the years to come. And as we speak, the first plenary session of the 20th CPC National Congress is still taking place inside the Great Hall of the People. And during that session, the members from the Central Committee will vote and elect for the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC and the General Secretary and the members for the Central Commission for the Discipline Inspection. Well, we're still here waiting for the China's top leadership lineup. As the time drew near, I will keep you guys updated.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Dong Xue. As we mentioned, and I repeat again, once the members of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the 20th CPC Central Committee are elected at the first plenary session, they are going to meet the press at around 12 o'clock in Beijing time or 400 GMT, so stay with CGTN for this.
Indeed, and now for more insight, we're joined in the studio by Professor Victor Gao and Professor Xia Lu. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. So throughout the week, we've been talking about the importance of the 20th CPC National Congress. Professor Gao, you said this could be crucial for the next 5 years and even beyond for the whole party and even whole Chinese nation. Now, all the results and achievements are out. Have you got a clearer understanding of that roadmap ahead?
Absolutely. I think about 1 week ago, the 20th Party Congress came with a big bang, and yesterday it concluded with a big bang with great splendor and great success. And I think the fact that it successfully elected the new Central Committee, which is in session right now as we speak, is a very important one, because the 20th Party Congress, in my view, normally just do 3 things. One is intra-party, that is all the things within the Communist Party, including, very importantly, election of new leaders, composition of the new Central Committee, and then they are doing today, as we speak, the election of the Politburo and the Standing Committee of the Politburo. The second thing is the CPC and China, which is very important because the CPC, after all, is the ruling party of China with more than about 97 million members and the largest political force in the world, for example. So everything that China does has being under the leadership of the CPC. Now, the third thing, equally importantly, that is the CPC and China and the rest of the world, because whatever CPC does, whatever China does now, has a major impact on the rest of the world. So I think after this whole week, things start to emerge in terms of the new policy initiatives, new emphasis, new positioning of CPC and the situations in China, as well as China's relations with the rest of the world. And I think the whole nation, the whole party, are rededicating ourselves to the goals outlined by the new Central Committee going forward in the next 5 years. But more importantly, as President Xi Jinping emphasized in his important speech about a week ago, that coming 5 years will lay the foundation for China to achieve the goals set for 2035, and then leading all the way to the middle of this century. Everything is interconnected. So I think from the Chinese perspective, we have the luxury of looking forward, not to tomorrow, but to 5 years later, and then all the way to 2035 and to the middle of this century.
Right. It's a long-term goal and very clear goal, actually. The main theme of CPC, the 20th National Congress of CPC, is building China into a modern socialist country. And CPC is now working very hard on this journey. Help us understand how significant this meeting is on that perspective.
Well, actually, I'm a kind of party historian. I do the historical study and comparative study of the party history. So let me just draw our attention to the history of the party congresses ever since the reform. So since the reform and opening up, now we have already got 9 congresses, right, from the 12th until the 20th. So we can say that the 20th National Congress of the party actually it is one of the earliest, in terms of the date held, being held. So why would we say so? Because obviously there's a continuity in this kind of party congress. That congress will be held early, and there will be, if there will be change, then that kind of change will be discussed, fully discussed, thoroughly discussed, and then the date of the held of the congress will be kind of late. So we can see that this congress, the 20th Congress of the party, is important because it focuses more on the continuity in terms of the strategy and the policy and even the leadership. And we can do a comparison between the report here and the report or the kind of resolution adopted last year in the the 6th plenary session of the 19th Central Committee about the 100-year history. We can compare the two resolutions. We can say that there is a highly kind of a similarity, high similarity between these two, the structure of the document. So in my argument, in my opinion, my argument is that the continuity now and in the future will be the legitimacy or the origin of the legitimacy of the party and China.
Why the continuity is so important, so vital?
Well, because continuity in terms of strategy and continuity in terms of institution and even continuity in terms of policy can provide a hope, can provide, let's say we can anticipate something, we can predict something, and there is always a hope, that there is always a certainty for China, because nowadays we can feel that not only in China but also in the international context or international community, most of the people will talk about one uncertainty, and most of the people will talk about and the unsafety, this kind of discussion. So the continuity of the party, of the Chinese Communist Party, Communist Party China, can not only provide a hope and the certainty not only for Chinese people but also to the rest of the world. So that's the significance of this continuity, in my opinion.
Indeed, there's a continuity, but also new content and even context to the future of the party and the whole Chinese nation. So, Professor Gao, let's talk about something new. That is, let's start with the new CPC Central Committee elected at this party Congress. I noticed that the Xinhua News Agency has published a quite extensive and detailed report on the whole election process of the new Central Committee. Let's start with one detail. In one certain area, 2 candidates were considered. One of them with extensive experience in grassroots level poverty alleviation work, and one without, and eventually the first one got elected into the Central Committee. How does that tell, maybe that's in a nutshell, but how does that tell about intra-party democracy and the election of the CPC?
Yes, indeed. I think the CPC organization, the department, probably is the largest and the most important and most significant human resources department or operation in the whole world, and also in mankind's history, because it's in charge of viewing, vetting, promoting, and disciplining, for example, almost 97 million party members. And then within the CPC, there is a very well-built, well-defined hierarchy. At the very top, you have the Central Committee. And then if you go to provinces, for example, municipalities, autonomous regions, for example, there is a Central Committee or Central branch. And there is a Central branch almost in all the entities in China, including universities, for example, and throughout the Chinese military. So the CPC is well structured. But then the sheer number of the members, for example, creates a lot of difficulty for the organization department to do its job. Therefore, the quality of the department of organization is the key, because they really need to identify the best talents and to weed out all those corrupt officials, for example, and to make sure that the CPC at different levels of the hierarchy have leaders and members who are clean, who are working very hard, who really want work for the well-being of the people, and also they abide by the party disciplines, abide by the laws in China, and they are really truly qualified. The case you mentioned, I think, involved two potential candidates. Each has its outstanding qualifications. However, in doing the vetting and in doing, for example, inquiries among people who work with them as colleagues and friends, then they need to come up with a view as to which candidate they want to recommend to the higher authority to be included as a member of the Central Committee. And then it's the same process for all the delegates who attend the 20th Party Congress. This process is very comprehensive, very detailed, and I'm aware of some of this part of the exercise. And it's amazing that they need to basically turn no stone unturned. Why? Because this decision eventually to promote or to recommend who to serve in the Congress and the Central Committee, for example, may eventually have major impact on, for example, whether that department or that province or that committee can better function, because the quality of the leaders really determine how everything we do whether they become a success or failure.
And Professor Xia, would you say this is a well-institutionalized process? Because also according to the open information, the election process started basically at the year end of 2020.
Yes, I agree with Professor Gao's opinion in terms of the selection and election of the cadres in the Communist Party of China. Actually, one of my teachers who has devoted his entire academic career in the studying of the cadre of the party, actually, is my teacher, and I have also been doing this kind of study. So one of his most important books is entitled "What Kind of Cadres Do We Need for the New Era?" Okay, and he identifies the following kind of characteristics of the good cadres. First, these people should know what to do. Okay. The second, these people should know how to do it, and the third, these people should have this courage and spirit in terms of doing the thing that they need to do. And the fourth, that they should be welcomed and supported, and welcomed, supported, and that's also welcomed, supported by not only Chinese people but also the rest of the world. And then fifth is more important. They know what is the right thing to do. So most of the cadres, we can say that most of the cadres are very hardworking, and they are very hardworking. They go to work even before 7 a.m. and they even live in their in the office, right? And for through different kind of days, and they don't go back to their home and taking care of their children or taking care of the parents. So they are very hardworking, but they need to know what are the right things to do, or what is the right thing to do. So that's the most important attribute or characteristic for leaders. So we can say that in this report just mentioned by Mr. Pan Deng, and Xi Jinping mentioned a word, a Marxist, leaders group. So this is one of the important new concepts that I catch up in not only in the report but also in the entire process of the election and the selection of the cadres, because that cadres this group of cadres are not only important to China but also to the Chinese nation for the rest or for the rest of the time to the mid of this century.
So strict rules and standards are observed in the process of nominating and electing the members of the Central Committee.
Indeed, gentlemen, we'll be getting back to you very soon. So we're talking about the Communist Party of China, the world's largest political institution. It has witnessed significant expansion and development since its founding in 1921. So what is the CPC and how its leadership structured? Let's find out.
The Communist Party of China forms the core of China's leadership. The CPC's constitution defines it as the vanguard of the Chinese working class, the people, and the nation. It says leadership of the CPC is the most essential feature of socialism with Chinese characteristics. One constant in the constitution is the CPC's commitment to its ultimate goal of realizing the communist ideology, seeking the happiness of the Chinese people, and the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. When it was founded in July 1921, there were only 58 party members. Today, its membership exceeds 96 million. At the grassroots level, there are more than 90 million party members who make up the CPC party committees in China's urban communities, villages, social institutions, state-owned firms, as well as in many private, local, and foreign companies operating on Chinese soil. Across cities, provinces, and autonomous regions, there are CPC party congresses that discuss local matters. Higher up, over 2,000 representatives are elected to the CPC's National Congress. The CPC Constitution stipulates that its National Congress is to be held every 5 years. When the CPC National Congress is not in session, the CPC Central Committee is tasked to make decisions. The CPC Central Committee has around 200 full members and less than 200 alternate members. They are reshuffled every 5 years during the CPC National Congress. Among the members of the CPC Central Committee, over 20 of them will form the Politburo, which gathers regularly to vote on important matters. Their decisions are based on one person, one vote. Once a majority is reached, they speak with a unified voice. This is based upon the Leninist idea of democratic centralism. From the Politburo, several members are elected at the first plenary session of the newly formed CPC Central Committee to form the Politburo Standing Committee. Throughout the CPC's history, the number of members in this top group, which reports to the Politburo, has varied from 5 to 11 people. The Politburo Standing Committee at present has 7 members. The CPC General Secretary convenes the meetings of the Politburo and Politburo Standing Committee. Since November 2012, Xi Jinping has served as the CPC General Secretary. He is also the President of China, having been elected by the National People's Congress.
All right, now let's dive deeper in the report delivered by Xi Jinping at the opening session of the 20th CPC National Congress. Mr. Xia, he mentioned 3 major events for China in the past decade. The first one is celebrating the party's centenary, of course, ushering in the new era of socialism with Chinese characteristics, and also completing the first centenary goal of building a moderately prosperous society in all respects. Very meaningful events for the party and for the whole country and its people as well. How important are those events to the development of China and also the future plan?
Okay, actually, after the delivering of the speech last week, we had a different kind of discussions in the academic kind of community. Yes, interpreting. So some of the scholars would argue that, okay, among these 3 events, there is only one event that is being done by the party, because, you don't have to do anything and you can have 100 years, right? You don't have to do anything and the time can go into the new era. But I have a different opinion on this, because,
Are you sure you don't need to do anything to celebrate centenary?
Of course. I don't agree with those kind.
It's not an easy job to reach 100 years old.
Exactly, that is my opinion. So we can, you see the rest of the world, different countries, they have a different kind of political parties and they have different political organizations. So few of them can live until 100 years and still with this vigor, vigor kind of talent, and it is more kind of talented people joining this party. So that is one of the important achievement of the party and of this country, because it can also have the continuous attraction to the best people, to the best talent among Chinese society. So that is not only the achievement, historic achievement in the last decade or last 100 years, but also a signal to the future that most of the good people can join the party, because this party can provide a platform, can provide opportunity, can even provide the chances for you to build not only the country but also yourself or your career. So that is one of the historic achievement. And for the achievement of the first centenary goal of the eradication of the poverty, that is also significant, not only to China, not only to Chinese people, but also to the rest of the world, because that kind of contribute to the stability of the society, of the international society, because we can say that nowadays the international society is not stable. We have the deficit of development, we have the deficit of trust, and we have deficit of even the food and the grain. But China's contribution in terms of eradication of poverty maintained or contribute to the stability to the social situation. So that's very kind of awesome and very historic.
Indeed, and Mr. Gao, since Mr. Xia just mentioned a lot of China's achievements, it's a fact, impact to the whole world. Of course, a country as big as China, its main policies, its main achievements surely will have very big impact globally. But exactly what has China changed by doing what they did and achieved what they have made?
Yeah, before I answer your very important question, let me be very brief to answer the previous question together with Professor Xia. First of all, I think if you look at the past 5 years or past 10 years, there are many achievements that China and the Chinese people and CPC should be proud of. However, General Secretary Xi Jinping highlighted 3 things. And I think these 3 things are really very profound, very important. Professor Xia mentioned the centenary. Now, for any political party, first of all, to survive for 100 years is no easy task. And then to remain relevant and to remain the leading force for a nation of 1.4 billion people, which is developing very rapidly over the past 44 years. That's no easy task at all. Especially China 44 years ago was relatively weak, relatively backward, and today China is the 2nd largest economy in the world. China's industrial output is larger than the US, Japan, and Germany combined. So I would say, by any stretch of the imagination, everyone with the decency of the mind would say, holy cow, this is great transformation of China. Exactly. Who is leading this whole process? It's the CPC. So I think President Xi Jinping absolutely is fully justified to say, yes, last year we celebrated the centenary. The centenary is not just the symbolism. Right. The centenary is really built upon all the underlying achievements and the transformation of the party, of the nation, and of the country. And this is in the overall context of very, very challenging circumstances. We now have pressure points from some of the largest countries in the world who do not mean good or well for the Chinese nation. They create all the obstacles, and we really need a strong leadership of the CPC to navigate us through all these difficulties. Now, coming back to your question about China's impact on the rest of the world, indeed, China now is very, very impactful, if I may use that word, as a nation on the world. I met with so many other countries, people from other countries. They basically say, China is so big, it's overwhelmingly important. We cannot comprehend how you do all this thing. How can one ruling party manage matters involving 1.4 billion people? Because the more you think about it, 1.4 billion people is larger than the total population of all the OECD countries combined. And the Chinese economy is already 550% that of India. China's economy is already 350% that of Japan. So you are really talking about China growing in size, gaining momentum, transforming itself, scaling heights after heights. And all this is under the leadership of the CPC. So when we are waiting for the results of the first Central Committee,
the plenary session.
The plenary session for the forming of the Politburo and the Standing Committee of the Politburo, I think I have great expectation that the new leadership will really navigate through the coming 5 years together with the Chinese people, the whole nation, by overcoming all the difficulties and the challenges. And then 5 years later, China will be more influential, more impactful, and China's fingerprint on the world will be better and will be felt more widely. And all this will be done through peace. And this is the message for the Chinese nation as well as for the rest of the world. China's growth and the gaining of more momentum is for peace rather than for rivalry with other countries or try to manhandle other countries. So I think the people in the rest of the world should take courage that we are gathered here for all these important political meetings.
We'll go through all those
Absolutely.
later in our coverage. Thank you very much, gentlemen. You're watching the special coverage on the new CPC leadership.
And we'll come back soon.
Xinjiang's annual GDP has doubled over the past decade. Per capita disposable income has more than doubled. Both are at record highs. People of all ethnic groups in Xinjiang are enjoying a happy life with security, stability, development, and progress on an equal footing.
In the past decade, China's manned space missions have made rapid progress and reached new heights. We have had a bigger flight platform, recorded longer flight durations, and established China's own space station.
We have successfully developed new technologies for dry-land rice farming and solved the problem of grain production. We have firmly secured our lifeline of food supplies.
China's Junsao technology and its experience on poverty reduction have spread to 106 countries and regions around the world. We are also contributing Chinese knowledge and strength to the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
You're watching CGTN. This is our special coverage on the new CPC leadership. My colleague Xu Qingduo joins us now from outside Great Hall of the People.
Hello there, Qingduo.
Hello,
you have been following the party congress for the past week. So what are your main takeaways from this event?
Well, if I may, I would use like one sentence to describe or summarize this very important meeting. That is, China is on a new journey, and the party is going to lead the nation to realize the second centenary goals of building China into a great modern socialist country, and to advance the rejuvenation of the Chinese civilization through a Chinese path of modernization. So the goals are very clear, crystal clear. Second centenary goals, building this nation into a modernization, socialist modernization, and of course the rejuvenation of the Chinese civilization. More importantly, is about in what ways, what are the means to realize that very important goal. That is the Chinese path of modernization, or Chinese modernization, or modernization with the Chinese characteristics, Chinese features. That's very important if you take a closer look at these features and characteristics, because in my opinion, it reflects these core values of the Chinese governance. It stresses very much about the common prosperity for all. Modernization is about for the 1.4 billion people. It's not about 1% or 20% of the nation enjoying the privileges of a modern lifestyle. It's about everyone. No one will be left behind. It's also about a peaceful development. So China, has developed very well through peaceful means. It did not resort to, say, colonization or military conflicts in other parts of the world. No, it's a peaceful means, and it will continue to follow such a peaceful path. It also stresses about this, harmony between humanity and nature, and also balanced approach between, say, material richness, that's in the sense of modernization, and also progress in culture and ethics. So, material richness itself is half success without this without this cultural and ethical progress that's also required. That's the Chinese definition, or the Chinese style modernization. So I think that's probably the one key sentence, and it helps people understand the Chinese goals and how to achieve those goals.
Thank you very much, Xu Xingde, reporting from the Great Hall of the People.
As Qingduo just mentioned, China has called for efforts to advance the nation's rejuvenation through a Chinese path to modernization. At the opening session of the 20th CPC National Congress, Xi Jinping stressed it as a central task of the party. Lu Wei has more details.
Listing the defining features of Chinese modernization, Xi Jinping has stressed that it is socialist modernization pursued under the leadership of the Communist Party of China. It contains elements that are common to the modernization processes of all countries, but it is more characterized by features that are unique to the Chinese context. Xi says Chinese modernization is the modernization of a huge population, of common prosperity for all, of material and cultural ethical advancement, of harmony between humanity and nature, and of peaceful development.
The essential requirements of Chinese modernization are as follows: upholding the leadership of the Communist Party of China and socialism with Chinese characteristics, pursuing high-quality development, developing whole-process people's democracy, enriching the people's cultural lives, achieving common prosperity for all, promoting harmony between humanity and nature, building a human community with a shared future, and creating a new form of human advancement.
From 2012 to 2021, China's GDP more than doubled to around 114 trillion yuan, and its per capita GDP jumped to 81,000 yuan, or over $12,000. And in the past decade, China's average contribution to global economic growth has reached 38.6%, exceeding the total contribution of G7 countries.
China's development is critical to the world. China has become a locomotive of the world economy, so China's development and achievements will have positive impacts on the world.
China was able to eradicate extreme poverty and has brought to the middle class hundreds and hundreds of millions of people. And it had also an enormous impact in the global welfare indicators.
The UN chief also praised China's partnership with the UN, saying that China is an important pillar of multilateralism as the country actively participates in global development and cooperation. China sends more peacekeepers than any other permanent members of the Security Council, and it has provided more than 2.2 billion doses of COVID vaccines to more than 120 countries and international organizations, contributing its share to combating global challenges.
And now for a closer look at China's path to modernization, we're now joined by our reporters Xu Xingchen in Chengdu in southwest China's Sichuan province, and Huang Fei in Guangzhou in southern Guangdong province, and also Wang Siwen in Shanghai. Let's head to Chengdu first.
Right, and Xingchen, President Xi has stated that the overarching goal of the rural vitalization strategy is the modernization of agriculture and rural areas. As an agriculture-based province, how is Sichuan working towards that goal?
Absolutely, Pandeng. So, to increase farmers' incomes and to provide food to the table for its 1.4 billion people are the key drivers for China to modernize its rural and agricultural industries. And right here, tractors and reaping machines like these are helping the country to achieve so. And here I am in southwest China's Chengdu, a village called Yanggong, a village of 100 families. And 5 years ago, they were harvesting with their own hands. And machines like this can be as faster, 100 times faster than by hands. But the improved efficiency comes with a cost. It's not a cheap machine. It's a $250,000 yuan in Chinese currency, and that's about 35 grand in US dollars. We can also see some real actions behind me harvesting the crops right here. But the increase in efficiency definitely compensates the cost for farmers to invest into industrializations and better technologies. And I also learned for this land, the farmers would grow crops and vegetables in different seasons, and that will increase their harvest and hence increase their incomes. And in the past decade, farmers here in China, their income has more than doubled. And one of the biggest evidence or the strongest evidence is just right behind me. Better housing with better looking. That's where the modern Chinese farmers are living right now, with better housing. And also learned for larger farm owners, they also invest into test fields for hybrid rices, hybrid crops that are more suitable here in China, and that would also further increase their harvest and hence better incomes. And more incomes, farmers are more willing to grow their crops and vegetables in the lands. And as I mentioned about food security, and right now China per capita grain share now reached over 480 kilograms, and that's 20% higher than the 400 kilograms per share grain per capita grain share recognized globally for the food security line. And definitely we can see China's rural and agricultural modernization are paying off with better pace and sustainable food to its 1.4 billion people. Pando.
Well, it looks like a bright picture ahead. Thank you very much, Xu Xingchen in Sichuan Province.
And now let's turn to Huangfei in Guangzhou, and the city is an important industrial base and a comprehensive industrial manufacturing center of southern China. Through years of development, it has established itself as an export-oriented modern industrial system. So, Huangfei, what has the city done to promote the establishment of a modern industrial system?
Hello, Dongning. Well, we know that in his latest work report, Xi Jinping said China will continue to develop new types of industrialization, and the goal is to become a powerful country in areas such as manufacturing, high-tech goods, cyberspace, and digitization. Here in Guangzhou, Xi's words have been welcomed by a local chip firm called CanSemi. They're a major supplier for the Internet of Things and the auto market. Their chips are the brains behind the hundreds of thousands of electric vehicles made locally. Just an hour from where we are, a new car rolls off the production line every minute. In fact, 1 in every 6 new energy vehicles in China are produced here in Guangdong. And this would not have been possible without strong supply chain management that has stood against global disruptions. Since last year, Guangzhou has appointed supply chain chiefs to oversee key industries, including AI, semiconductors, and advanced manufacturing. And it's designed to mitigate impacts of rising raw material costs and trade protectionism, as well as to foster closer ties between public and private sectors. But of course, when Xi talked about quality growth, it's also in alignment with his carbon neutrality target. As factories become more modernized, they should also be greener and more energy efficient. Here in Guangdong, the government has mobilized energy specialists to help companies clean up their productions, and it's also pushing for renewable energy, with 17 new wind power plants put into use just in the last year. And that's one of the reasons why officials say Guangdong contributes to almost 11% of the national economy, with just about 7% of energy consumption. And it will continue to propel a nationwide effort to modernize industries with minimal costs to the environment. Back to you.
All right, a really comprehensive efforts in terms of building a modern socialist society there.
Right, and from the Pearl River Delta, we go to the Yangtze River Delta. Shanghai has been a front-runner when it comes to China's reform and opening up. Over the past decade, the city has been the testing ground for institutional innovations and in spearheading high-quality growth.
Right, and President Xi has stressed the importance of promoting this high standard opening up policy during the 20th CPC National Congress. In order to realize these goals, what's the next breakthrough for Shanghai?
Hi, Dongning. Yes, as you mentioned, Shanghai is always considered a pioneer in China's reform and opening up. Hi, Dongning. Yes, as you mentioned, Shanghai has been always considered the pioneer of China's reform and opening up. And the report to the 20th CPC National Congress says deepening reform and opening up is important for high-quality development and Chinese modernization. Well, over the past 10 years, the city has worked on expanding domestic demand and promoting high-quality trade. Well, Shanghai's total retail sales of consumer goods have been doubled in the past 10 years, while ranking first among all the cities in China. Shanghai has also become China's biggest hub for imported consumer goods and the top choice of most international brands entering the Chinese market. Well, in foreign investment, Shanghai has the highest concentration of regional headquarters of multinational companies in China, with a total number of 877. And talking about location, Shanghai has a strategic location in east part of China, and it has the world's largest deep water port, and it has unique advantages in attracting foreign investment and facilitating free trade. Well, in 2018, the city added a new area to its free trade zone. The Lingang Special Area has tested creative reforms to advance investment and trade facilitation. Well, most imports arriving there only require one instead of two inspection phases for customs clearance. And for the foreign flagged vessels are now also allowed to carry out cargo relays at its Yangshan port. Well, earlier, the director of the Shanghai Commerce Commission said the city will further promote the investment facilitation and carry out more convenient and efficient policies on customs clearance. Dongning.
Thank you very much, Wang Siwen, reporting from Shanghai.
Representatives from civil society groups and residents in Hong Kong, SAR and Macau have voiced their hopes for better integration with the national development as the country pursues a new journey towards becoming a modern socialist country. Take a listen.
The motherland is what Hong Kong can always count on, and Hong Kong's biggest advantage is one country, two systems. At this new point in history, Hong Kong compatriots should take the initiative to integrate into overall national development, show new achievements and make new contributions.
Now we're improving the election system, as well as some reforms in education. In the future, I think there will be more people with a better world vision to participate in the country's development and to make contributions to the country.
I believe the young people of Macau must establish a lofty ideal of serving the country, love both the motherland and Macau, and make a contribution to building China into a stronger country and its rejuvenation.
The country cares about us. We can take the bus for free, and it is more convenient to go through customs. Zhuhai accepts Macau residents to buy social security, medical insurance. Now that we are further integrated into the Greater Bay Area, I feel better and better.
Also, political parties, organizations and people from China's Taiwan region have extended congratulations on the 20th CPC National Congress. The Kuomintang Central Committee expressed hope in maintaining dialogue and cooperation with the Communist Party of China. They also shared their wish to deepen mutual trust to benefit people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait and safeguard peace. Now, for more insight, let's go to Professor Xia Lu and Professor Victor Gao. Professor Xia, let's talk about Chinese modernization. From the political document adopted by the 20th CPC National Congress, it's an in-depth concept with many sides to it, and eventually leads to maybe new theories in the new era. So what do you think is the central concept here? Is it should be about the people?
Yes, that's the key or the essence of this development or modernization is always about the people and about the Chinese people. So we can say that in this report, Xi Jinping mentioned that the modernization of China follows the common characteristics of other countries, but it has also got Chinese own characteristics in terms of modernization. So he mentioned the 5 main characteristics. The first one is the huge population. So the modernization of China should be shared and differentiated by 1.4, and even more, we can say the growing, right? The growing trendy. So even more Chinese population, that's more than 1.4. So this huge population, well, is larger than the previous, let's say, developed countries or modernized countries combined ever since we have economic globalization or, let's say, economic communication since 16th or 17th century, right? So we can say that's a huge population, and a huge population signals the huge task of China. So even, well, China can, well, we can say that even with this huge population, China can still achieve this task. That's historic. That's an awesome. That's kind of, unique. And that's the first one. And the second one is that the Chinese modernization will be leaded. There will be a leadership for the modernization of China. So that means it's not a disorder thing. That's not a chaotic thing. So there must be some kind of leader. So we realize that the leadership or constant leadership is not only for the new era, but also for the entire the Chinese revolution, socialist construction, open reform, and even the new era. So always have a constant leadership is the key attributes of China's modernization. And then China's modernization will not be developed by exploiting others, or let's say invading others, or let's say taking other countries' advantage. So this development modernization will be a modernization with the peace development. So that is the main achievement or the target of China, and that is also the main contribution to the new type of civilization. So that's the main contribution.
And in the report, Mr. Gao, he said, in terms of China's overall development, he said to build a modern socialist country in all respects, we must first and foremost to pursue high quality development. This is a kind of a buzzword recently, high quality development. How should we understand the high development? To me, it means a better life, better equipment. It's a transition from get what we didn't have to a process of getting something better. Better equipment, for instance, for manufacture, and better life quality. But this concept actually embodies a lot more than that, right?
Absolutely. I think high quality development has many important components to it. For example, China's production used to be very labor intensive. One of our competitive advantages in the early years of reform and opening to the outside world was our cheap labor. But now going forward, our production should be more technologically intensive in technology and technical know-how, and invented in China rather than manufactured in China. And eventually, we probably should be, based more on science and technologies. That's one way to look at it. Now, the other way to look at it is that, for example, China historically has always been an agricultural big country. However, in doing modern agricultural production, we need to have more scientific and technological input. Farmers are no longer farmers. Farmers should also learn how to do trading on the internet, for example, how to use machines, as one of your reporters just now mentioned.
Scientific planting.
And even operating a Beidou navigation system.
Absolutely, and also how to manage finance, for example, how to produce their products and push their products not just to the vendor, but all the way to the doorstep of the end consumers. So it is changing, and I would say agriculture, very traditional in our mind, will become very, very high quality development, and it will be really integrated with many other branches of the Chinese economy. There are many, many ways to do this.
Indeed, and we'll go through them one by one, maybe later. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
All right, you're now watching the special coverage of a new CPC leadership.
And we'll come back soon. Do stay tuned.
What impressed me the most in the report is that we found the second answer of jumping out of the historical cyclical rate, which is self-revolution. As a student majoring in party building, what we will do next is to study, research, and explain the theory of self-revolution.
For agricultural products, I have more choices and options. I can also mail local agricultural specialities to my parents back home. I'm pretty happy with my life now. It's easy for me to get what I need, including those from outside the region. Mail deliveries are fast. Roads are also better now. It's convenient to travel around.
Over the years, pensions for retirees have grown with GDP. I think our life is very good, especially in our community. There are canteens for the elderly, doctors available, a sports square, and a reading room. We feel life is peaceful.
China always promotes peace and represents the interests of developing countries. I support our country's actions and stance.
Hello everyone, welcome to our special coverage. But for now, let's get our viewers caught up with what else is happening in other parts of the world. And we begin in Italy. Giorgia Meloni has been sworn in as the country's prime minister on Saturday. The far-right leader promises to work closely with her international partners, despite the divergent views of her coalition allies. She is the first woman to head an Italian government. CGTN's Alex Frazier has more from Milan.
Italy's most right-wing government since the Second World War has been sworn in. Giorgia Meloni took the oath in front of Italian President Sergio Mattarella to become Italy's first ever female prime minister. One by one, new members of her cabinet were called to swear their oath to Italy's constitution. The cabinet includes politicians from all three of the right-wing coalition's member parties, Brothers of Italy, the League and Forza Italia. The coalition appeared to be in a precarious position earlier in the week, following infighting between partners and controversial comments from former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, where he said he was still friends with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Ministerial appointments had to be carefully balanced in order to keep rival factions together as one government. Antonio Tajani, former President of the European Parliament and member of Forza Italia, will serve as Foreign Minister as well as Deputy Prime Minister. The appointment signals that Meloni is prepared to make overtures towards Brussels on foreign policy. Before the election, criticism was levelled at her and the coalition, saying it would be Eurosceptic and pro-Russian. The other Deputy Prime Minister, Matteo Salvini, who's leader of the League, will also act as Minister for Transport and Infrastructure. Giancarlo Giorgetti is the new Finance Minister. He served in the previous coalition headed by Mario Draghi as Minister for Economic Development. The government will face immediate economic challenges, inflation and energy crisis, and will need to approve a budget to send to Brussels before December. Alex Fraser, CGTN, Milan.
The former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has returned to the UK amid speculation he may be preparing to enter the race to become the next resident of 10 Downing Street. There are reports he cut short a holiday after Liz Truss's resignation this week. We get this report from CGTN's Catherine Drew.
Jetting back from the Caribbean, Boris Johnson has returned to the UK with friends saying he's ready to enter the race for his old job. Johnson and other candidates have until Monday afternoon to get the backing of 100 MPs to be in the running. Johnson's possible return to frontline politics is dividing the Conservatives, with some claiming he is the only leader to have won a mandate following his victorious 2019 general election.
Thank you.
Others are appalled, saying he resigned just 6 weeks ago following a series of scandals and will be returning as a parliamentary committee begins taking evidence over allegations he lied to Parliament over lockdown parties in Downing Street.
I don't think we can ignore this issue of the Committee on Standards and Privileges. If someone thinks otherwise, then they can come out and explain how you could be Prime Minister and give testimony and potentially face a sanction. But I haven't heard that explanation, and we have got to go forward, not go back and end up with the Groundhog Day, if you like, of Partygate again.
I know about the cost of living and how frightening it can be.
The first candidate to officially declare is Penny Mordaunt, former minister who came third in the race when Johnson left office in July. The third candidate, and the only one so far to have secured the backing of over 100 MPs, is Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor whose resignation triggered an exodus from Boris Johnson's cabinet that led to his resignation. Whoever takes the keys to Downing Street faces multiple challenges, including ending the financial turbulence caused by Liz Truss's now aborted tax-cutting and spending plans, a cost of living crisis, and salvaging the reputation of the Conservatives after a period of unprecedented upheaval. The new PM will be the 5th Conservative Prime Minister in the last 6 years. Catherine Drew, CGTN.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump was issued an order on Friday to testify and provide documents to the House of Representatives committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riot. The committee said it had sent a subpoena to Trump requiring him to submit documents to the panel by November the 4th and appear for deposition testimony beginning on or about 10 days after. Thousands of Trump supporters attacked the Capitol on January the 6th, 2021, after Trump delivered a speech at a rally near the White House. 5 people, including a police officer, died during or shortly after the riot. More than 140 police officers were injured, and the Capitol suffered millions of dollars in damage. Iranian state news reports that the country's foreign minister claimed he received a message from the U.S. expressing their hastiness to reach a nuclear deal with Iran. Hossein Amir Abdullahian made the claims 3 days ago and said that the IAEA's accusations against Iran's nuclear program should be resolved before any agreement. When asked about U.S. officials' comments saying nuclear negotiations were off the U.S. agenda, the foreign minister said the U.S. is contradictory, as they were in a hurry to reach an agreement in their recent message. Iran signed the nuclear deal with world powers in July 2015. However, Washington quit the agreement and reimposed unilateral sanctions on Tehran. Tens of thousands of protesters in 6 German cities gathered on Saturday to demand a more just distribution of government funds to deal with rising energy prices and living costs and a faster transition away from fossil fuels. Protesters marched in Berlin, Dusseldorf, Hanover, Stuttgart, Dresden, and Frankfurt am Main. Germany's parliament on Friday approved a rescue package equivalent to $195 billion, aiming to protect companies and households from the impact of soaring energy prices. Inflation in September hit its highest level in more than a quarter of a century, driven by higher energy costs. And these are the world stories we're following for you this hour. Our special coverage with Dong and Pandong will return in just a moment. Stay with us.
Now, in the report to the 20th CPC National Congress, Xi Jinping underscored the importance of scientific and technological innovation and green development, and he also pledged to raise the quality of life, as we've been talking about. And for more, let's go live to our reporters Huang Fei in Guangzhou in South China's Guangdong Province, Xu Xinchen in Chengdu in Southwest China's Sichuan Province, and also Wang Siwen in East China's Shanghai. Let me go to you first, Huang Fei. Xi Jinping has called for accelerated efforts in building the country into a leader in science and technology, and also achieving sci-tech self-reliance and self-strengthening at higher levels. As a pioneer of reform and opening up, the southern Chinese city of Guangzhou boasts a tremendous advantage in research and development and technology and innovation and human resources, etc., etc. So what strategies do you think Guangzhou has been adopting to attract talents, and what are the highlights of his innovation plan?
Hello, Dongning. Yes, as you said, at the National Congress, we've heard modernization being named as the central task for the country's next 5 years and beyond. And critical to that aspiration is scientific and technological self-sufficiency. And here in the Greater Bay Area, this is seen as a frontier of the battle. Last year, a total of 780,000 patents were granted here. Among them, nearly 100,000 were for inventions. It's not hard to see why when you look at an example like Nansha. It's the district in the southern tip of Guangzhou, about 3/4 the size of Hong Kong, and it's been earmarked as a key developmental zone under the Greater Bay Area strategy. Now, Nansha is already home to hundreds of high-tech firms such as Pony AI, which plans to mass-produce robo-trucks. Nansha has also got the largest shipbuilding yard here in South China, where some of the world's most advanced cruises and tankers are built. The key is in the last mile of technological transfer. Scientists working closely with industries to solve problems and commercialize cutting-edge findings. And companies say this is crucial at a time Western countries are seeking to put a cap on China's tech capabilities. Xi Jinping has stressed the importance of grooming and attracting all necessary talent to meet the country's strategic needs. And so the government is investing tens of millions of dollars as well. It's offering tax reductions to innovative firms, and if you're deemed a critical talent with an overseas doctorate degree, you could get up to $130 million to relocate here. Eligible talents from Hong Kong and Macau also enjoy a range of support from housing, healthcare to children's education. And so these measures are likely to expand following Xi's report in which he said China will concentrate resources to facilitate breakthroughs in core technologies and turn China into a global technological powerhouse. Back to you, Dongning.
All right, thank you very much, Hong Bei, reporting from Guangzhou.
And continue our coverage on that. In the report to the 20th CPC National Congress, Xi Jinping said China will prioritize ecological protection and pursue green and low-carbon development. Following the Green Development Principles, Sichuan in southwest China has adopted quite some measures to protect the environment. So, Xingchen, tell us more about those measures.
For sure. So generally speaking, China has been increasingly focusing on its green development and sustainability. And the country right now has the world's largest renewable energy installations that include wind, solar, and hydropower. Hydropower are providing most of the electricity here in southwest China's Sichuan. And the latest number is 60% of electricity consumed here in China are now coming from renewable energy. And also the country has been working very hard to update its coal-fired plants and making greener and cleaner, and also trying to reduce its reliance on coals. But that's just the top policy, the government policies. And also here, local people are growing more accustomed to a greener lifestyles. New energy vehicles are becoming more favored by a lot of people here, and China has become the largest world market for EVs, and also bikes are coming back. Here in southwest China, Chengdu, the city not only has greeneries and farms, and also it has one of the world's longest bike lanes, dedicated bike lanes called the Greenway Tianfu. And that amounts to 17,000 kilometers. And the lanes are also interconnected. It's not just in the cities, but also around the city with over 10 million people living here. So right now, white-collar workers or regular office workers are more willing to bike around, bike to work, back home, and also these benefits, infrastructures also kind of spark new enthusiasms among modern Chinese people, and they are now more willing to go outdoors, for example, for camping or other outdoorsy events. So it's not just about top policies, but also about its people are now more favored towards a green lifestyle and more other streams for revenues for business opportunities as well. So it's not just the cities becoming greener, but also the people are becoming greener.
Indeed, quite a ride ahead, if you don't mind, Pound. Reporter Xu Xingchen in Chengdu.
Well, I remember the bicycles are always with us. It didn't go away actually, but now it's deemed as a green way of of going to work or traveling. Indeed. Well, in his remarks at the 20th CPC National Congress, Xi Jinping pledged that the party will improve the people's well-being and raise living standards. So now I will go to our reporter Wang Siwen in Shanghai again to find out how these goals are being met. So, Siwen, what are some improvements you've seen in people's lives in Shanghai?
Hi, Dongning. Yes, Shanghai has done a lot in improving people's quality of life. And I have to mention the master plan, which has been issued by the Shanghai Urban Planning and Land Resources Administration Bureau. It maps out the city's development from 2017 to 2035. And one of the highlights is to build a 15-minute community life circle to enhance the quality of life. Well, authorities hope to make daily essentials and services highly accessible to residents and to nearly 99% of the population by 2035. Well, the city has a 1,000 parks program aiming to have 1,000 parks in Shanghai by 2025 and to build a park city by 2035. Well, parks and squares covering over 400 square meters will be within 5 minutes walking distance, and 99% of public facilities will be within a 15-minute walking distance. While responding to the trend of an increasingly aging population, Shanghai will further improve its senior care services, and there will be about 500 community-based comprehensive senior service centers in the city by 2025. Well, Shanghai also focuses on the sustainable use of old residential houses. Well, by 2020, the city had renovated 40 million square meters worth of old properties and benefiting nearly 800,000 people. Well, a number of historic buildings such as the Wukang Building and the 1933 Lao Changfang establishment have also been restored and have become highly popular among netizens. Well, the Shanghai Master Plan from 2017 to 2035 aims to plan the city where residents of all ages can enjoy their lives and lead a healthy lifestyle, and enhancing Shanghai's core functions in building towards a global city. Dongning.
Sounds terrific. Thank you very much, Wang Siwen, reporting from Shanghai.
And for more insight, let's go to our studio guest. So, gentlemen, let's talk a little bit more about green development. Professor Gao, I think by saying green, it's so much more than a color or a phenomenon. Following your earlier discussion, maybe it leads to the very fundamental transformation of the model of China's development. No more pollution first, treatment later. And also this famous quoting from Xi Jinping saying that, quote, lucid waters and lush mountains are invaluable assets. Do you think this will be a great mind shift for all the people in China?
Absolutely. I think the beginning of this great mind shift actually happened around 2000 and intensified about 10 years ago. Mainly because in China, in the first part of our reform and opening to the outside world, our top priority was just to develop, just to provide enough food and clothing for the people, to beat up beat back backwardness. However, starting around 2000 and increasingly starting about 10 years ago, we realized that the real task is not develop or die. The real task is develop and protect environmental protections. So this becomes equally important. And in many ways, actually, environmental protection is more important than the traditional way of doing business or promoting development. That means we have a new paradigm. That is, while we need to be relentless in promoting development, we need to be devoting more efforts and time and resources to protect the environment, because environmental protection will eventually generate greater benefits for all of us involved, and will make sure that our development, economically speaking, for example, and the way we do business in all respects of our life can have greater sustainability. This paradigm shift is intensifying in China, and I think President Xi Jinping really played a leadership role in rallying all the resources in China, mobilizing everyone in China in doing the better thing, so that now China is a champion of environmental protection, and China set the goals for 2030, 2060 in terms of the peaking and neutrality of carbon emission, for example. We are on the way to achieve these goals.
Talking about that very ambitious goal of from peaking carbon dioxide emissions to carbon neutrality in just 30 years, it is a very short period for achieving such a big goal. What does this mean, Mr. Xia, for the country and the whole world?
Well, it shows the resolution of the Chinese leadership, not only in the this term of the leadership, but also for the next term or the next Central Committee or the next, let's say, the Politburo, and also the resolution about Chinese people to the green development of the entire world, to the rest of the world. So that shows the responsibility of the party leadership. So, and actually, even before we enter the new era, Chinese leader has already started to thinking about the balance between the economic development and the maintenance of the ecological environment. Actually, when he was still a village party kind of secretary, well, Xi Jinping has focused on the maintenance of the soil, the consolidation of the soil, the land in the northwest and remote area, when he was still a kind of a village party secretary. And when he also served as the county party secretary in northern China's county, actually he also paid attention to the balance between the economic development and also the ecology. And not to mention when he was kind of serving the secretary of the Zhejiang province in southeast China. So actually we can see the very continuous, let's say, development of his thinking and even the central leadership's thinking about the balance between the economic development and ecological, consolidation.
Right.
So that also reveals the philosophy of China's Communist Party. That's the dialectical thinking and the dialectical, practice. So I think this is the most important kind of contribution, not only to the practice, but also about how to think of our society, how to think
That's
about
the
nature.
very important word, ideology. When we talk about high quality, we're not only talking about the implementations, the plans, but also more importantly, the high quality ideology. But talking about environmental protection, China has made great efforts in reducing coal consumption. But as we can see, as the world is entering choppy waters, is struggling, Europe now is returning to use coal. So what's the point of China sticking to green development?
Well, first of all, China has one of the largest coal reserves in the world, and for many, many years, coal was the most dominant, most important pillar of China's energy security. However, coal is dirty indeed, and it pollutes quite a lot. So the Central Committee's decision is to use less coal and promote new and renewable sources of development, including natural gas, actually. So coal as a contributor to China's energy mix is on the decline. And this is very encouraging, even though occasionally it bounced back marginally, for example. But I think China will need to really reduce further the dependence on coal to below 50% to start with, and hopefully to a lower percentage. On the other hand, I think China is the leading country in terms of production, manufacturing, and also using new and renewable sources of energy, not only hydropower, but also wind power and solar power. And this requires a lot of input in terms of technological breakthroughs, as well as manufacturing and innovation. And I think China is very proud to be leading the world in this respect. And I personally hope other countries will not adopt a protectionist mentality to see China's dominant position in this particular regard. We need to really cooperate with each other, collaborate with each other, because the end goal is to make sure that the energy that mankind uses will be more and more reliant on new and renewable sources of energy. So I think we are all very proud of China's achievements, and we expect that China, under the new Central Committee leadership for the coming 5 years, will play a more important role in promoting green and renewable sources of energy.
And Professor Xia, let me follow up on your earlier discussion. You explained thoroughly on very forming of this principle, green development, low carbon and so on. But in real life decision making, we know China is a vast country. Development levels in different areas vary hugely. So would you say this is a challenge for local decision makers?
Yes, of course it is a challenge, but actually when we look back to the 100-year history of the party, we would say that the party actually is facing challenges every year. I mean even every day. So the challenge is kind of a normal thing, or normal kind of a task for the Communist Party of China. And even I would argue that without challenge, there would be no development. So that means challenging is just there. Whether you think or not, whether you kind of face it or not, the challenge is there. So that also shows the real characteristics of Chinese people and the Chinese leadership. Would never be afraid of facing the challenge, never be afraid of those kind of the changes or other kind of potential challenges. So rightly right facing the challenge and right considering the future the contribution of the policy would be another kind of important characteristic of Chinese leadership. So just like I mentioned, the leader should know what to do, leader should know how to do, leader should know what kind of resources they have in order to overcome the difficulties. So that also of course these are challenging, but I think we can overcome the challenge in the future. Yeah.
We're going forward amid all the challenges and of course achievements as well. Thank you very much. And you're now watching the special coverage of a new CPC leadership.
And we'll come back soon. Please stay tuned.
The CPC story is very appealing in the world. We want to present a comprehensive, three-dimensional and authentic image of the Communist Party of China.
Targeted poverty alleviation has made groundbreaking changes in our Xibadong village. Many young people have returned from Shanghai and Zhejiang, working here as tour guides, village cadres, or starting their own businesses. Xibadong is becoming more and more dynamic.
Nowadays, our rice fields are basically mechanized from planting to harvesting. Drones are used for sowing and spraying pesticides. I have also become a pilot of drones, managing more than 60 hectares of land.
Our predecessors turned barren land into the lush Saihanba forest from scratch. The next thing we need to do is achieve high-quality development of green industry.
You're now watching our special coverage of the new CPC leadership, and the members of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the 20th CPC Central Committee are expected to meet the press quite soon. And our reporter Dong Xue is joining us from the Great Hall of People again. Hello there, Dong Xue. So tell us the mood there.
Well, Doni, yes, I'm still here at the Golden Hall inside the Great Hall of the People here in the Chinese capital, Beijing. Right now, you can already feel the anticipation here. For those who've been closely monitoring on China's political events, you will know this is the place where meetings and press conferences are being held by high-level officials here in China. And for today's occasion, we're here to expect China's top leadership lineup. And as you can see behind me, the conference hall is getting packed gradually. Well, there are about 300 journalists from both domestic and international are gathered here and ready to capture the moment. And as we speak, the first plenary session of the 20th CPC National Congress is still underway here inside the Great Hall of the People. The newly elected 205 members of the CPC Central Committee and its 171 alternate members and also 133 members for the Central Commission for Discipline Inspections are gathering here to vote and elect for China's top leadership, known as the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC, and the Secretary General, of course, and the members for the Central Commission for Discipline Inspections. Well, as journalists waiting here, including me, knowing, of course, that the CPC is the biggest political party in the world and the ruling party and the most important political party here in China, you will know you will be witnessing something very important in the history. And for me, I feel like today's occasion is beyond important because we will be expecting China's top leadership lineup, known as the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC. Well, the number in this group varies from 3 to 9 historically, and their main tasks would be turning guidelines into specific policies and actions in the years to come. And as the time drew near, we are about like 15 minutes. Maybe we will be expecting the lineup around noon Beijing time. Dongning.
Well, thank you very much, Dong Xue. And let's remind our viewers that as our special coverage continues, the first plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee is underway. Now, more updates. In the report to the 20th CPC National Congress, Xi Jinping said China has always been committed to its foreign policy goals of upholding world peace and promoting common development. He also said that China remains firm in pursuing an independent foreign policy of peace. He went on to say that China stands against all forms of hegemony, the Cold War mentality, and interference in other countries' internal affairs. Xi Jinping noted that China would never seek to engage in hegemony or expansionism and that it adheres to the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. He said China is committed to promoting a new kind of international relations based on equality, openness and cooperation. As well as this, Xi Jinping said China's foreign policy goals look to build an open global economy that delivers greater benefits to all people. He said China is also playing an active part in the reform and development of the global governance system and is dedicated to making global governance fairer and more equitable. Xi Jinping said China had proposed the Global Development Initiative and the Global Security Initiative, something he is willing to cooperate with the international community to achieve.
Meanwhile, the international community has been commenting on this event. In an exclusive interview with CGTN, Valentina Matvienko, Speaker of the Federation of Council of the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation, praised China's achievements over the past decade. And she said Chinese-style modernization balances material and also cultural ethical progress, and Russia agrees and also believes in this way of development.
The 20th National Congress of the CPC and Xi Jinping's report is an event of great political significance, not only for China itself, but also for the whole world. Today, China is a world power and is having a huge impact on global development and history. I was very impressed by this report. In my opinion, its main message is to lead the party and the people and to continue to deepen reforms. China has been on the road to reform for more than 40 years and has been comprehensively deepening reforms in the last decade. I think this proves that our Chinese friends are confident in their chosen path of development. And the report gives confidence that the proposed goals are achievable. Xi Jinping was elected General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee 10 years ago. 10 years on, China's GDP has doubled, a moderately prosperous society has been built, and absolute poverty has been completely eliminated. Now, China has the most powerful technology, production, and defensive capabilities. And China is confident in its path of economic, social, and cultural progress. We're happy for the Chinese people on their achievements. The report emphasizes the key role of Chinese-style modernization in China's development. Chinese-style modernization balances material and cultural ethical progress. We agree and believe in this way of development.
Ahead of the 20th CPC National Congress, we heard from the presidents of Indonesia and Montenegro, who hailed China's efforts on facilitating domestic and international agendas.
Ya, saya kira kalau semakin banyak kerjasama Indonesia dan RRT akan semakin baik bagi kedua negara. Apapun, entah itu pelabuhan laut, entah itu airport, entah itu jalan tol. Saya kira semua inisiatif harus berkontribusi bagi stabilitas, bagi perdamaian, bagi kesejahteraan di kawasan maupun di dunia. Dan kolaborasi itu harus saling menguntungkan. Dan Indonesia berharap Global Development Initiative menjadi sebuah platform untuk mempercepat pencapaian SDGs. Dan sekali lagi Indonesia siap untuk terus bermitra dalam rangka percepatan pencapaian SDGs. Dan juga terkait dengan Global Security Initiative.
Kina je postala u međuvremenu druga ekonomija u svijetu. Kina je 10 godina ranije uspjela da ostvari sve ciljeve agende održivog razvoja Ujedinjenih nacija. Kina je danas otprilike na nivou od 18,5% svjetske ekonomije. Dakle, to su rezultati koji svakako zaslužuju puno poštovanje i koji ukazuju na odgovorno vođenje državnih interesa, odgovorno upravljanje državnim interesima tako značajne zemlje kao što je Kina. Imajući u vidu mjesto koje Kina zauzima na globalnoj sceni, to je svakako razlog za poštovanje, rekao bih, najšire međunarodne zajednice.
Well, the week-long 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China has concluded in Beijing, and the 20th CPC Central Committee is now holding their first plenary session today. For more on that, our reporter Dai Kai-yi is joining us from the Great Hall of People in Beijing. Kai-yi, hello there. You have been following the meeting closely. What are the highlights of the week-long event, and what can we expect from today's event?
Yes, Doni and Pandeng, we're awaiting the new lineup of the CPC leadership, as the first plenary session will elect the Politburo, its standing committee, as well as the general secretary of the standing committee. So they're expected to meet the press in just about an hour or so. It's been highly anticipated, and the world's been watching. Many are expecting how the new party leadership will tackle challenges on a global scale facing the world's second largest economy. So since the opening session of the 20th CPC National Congress, international scholars, experts, and analysts have been sharing their insights on the Party Congress. For example, there's a term in the report delivered by Xi Jinping last Sunday, a Chinese path to modernization is a key term defining the journey of the country's rejuvenation. It's been closely analyzed. For example, foreign experts say that Chinese people sought to realize the country's modernization for decades, and the country has achieved remarkable success. And that success is based on homegrown policies and strategies, and it's also based on effectively using its resources. So some say the modernization model will get the country closer to its goals, such as achieving common prosperity. And there's also been voices from developing countries and emerging markets saying that this Chinese path to modernization is really inspiring to them, because this can serve as a model for all developing countries around the world. As most of them have been hoping for moving into the next phase of modernization. And in terms of global governance, scholars spoke highly of China's vision of building a human community with a shared future, because they say that the vision brings a Chinese way of thinking, and it brings, of course, peace and stability to the world. And not just and it's not just to them. It's not just another political phrase, because China has already initiated 3 programs, and they are the Belt and Road Initiative, the Global Development Initiative, as well as the Global Security Initiative. At the same time, diverse multinational organizations like BRICS, like Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, have contributed a lot globally, and their role is only now broadening. And those multilateral organizations are either spearheaded or bolstered by China, and they allow for different countries to come together and have specific objectives for them to work towards, as well as, most important of all, to have a real dialogue. Back to Pandeng and Dongning.
Thank you very much, Kai-yi, reporting from the Great Hall of People in Beijing.
Now, for more insight, let's talk to our studio guest, Professor Gao. At the start of this special coverage, you proposed this 3-tiered analysis on the importance of the 20th the CPC National Congress. The third and not the least one is of the CPC, China, and the rest of the world. So what are the key messages you've been getting on that from this political gathering?
Well, first of all, China will be more united than ever after the 20th Party Congress's successful conclusion yesterday. And then China will be united not only within the party, within China itself, and also China will gain more and more support abroad. This is really against and just opposite what some Western countries expect. They want to isolate China. But I think more and more countries will realize that China has the stability, China is devoted and committed to reform and opening to the outside world and continued economic development, and China will be really contributing to more global growth and cooperation with everyone in the world. Therefore, I think in the coming 5 years, the public opinion in the world at large, especially among Western countries, will become more positive about China as a major force, standing firm for peace and development.
Right, and solidarity is indeed a very key word. It's very essential, more than ever, especially at present. And the Congress called on the CPC members and also the military and all Chinese people together to work hard with solidarity and confidence. It stressed a very important sentence here, quote unquote, empty talk undermines the country and practical work revitalize it. How should we understand this? What clues can we get from this sentence about the CPC's future plans and strategies?
Well, in a sense, I think the taste of the pudding is in eating it. And I think China has always emphasized that the only litmus test of truth is practice. So everything needs to be put into practice, whether you are a good leader or not, whether your theory is good or not, for example, will be tested by what we do as a country, as a nation, as a party. If it generates greater productivity and efficiency, if it really brings a better livelihood for the people, for example, and then if it really makes China standing firm to defend our principles, sovereignty and territorial integrity, then they will win the support of the people. So I think we are not in the stage to split the hair, for example, to argue about ideology or theories per se. We want to use all these theoretical academic analysis to serve one purpose and one purpose only. That is to generate the results and to generate the efficiency and productivity for the benefit of the whole people.
Right, and Professor Xia, what about, let's follow up a little bit more on the building of a community of shared future for mankind. Actually, what about the approaches proposed by China, the Global Security Initiative and the Global Development Initiative? How our global views understand the themes of these two initiatives?
Yes, well, if we want to answer this kind of question, let's just go back to, not only 100 years ago, even go back to the really starting point of the current international order and international relations. So in my classroom, I always teach my students that when we think about this, terms like sovereignty, terms like diplomacy, terms like consulate, this kind of thing, or international treaty, we should be, let's say, arguing that these things always existed in society. No, it does not, or it did not exist until the 16th century or 17th century. Right? And that international order was built on a treaty called Westphalia Treaty and in 1648. And that treaty and that international order was firstly created and innovated only for the European countries. And that European countries only solely for the Western European countries, not even included the Slavic countries or Slavic nations. But until, through this kind of globalization and imperialist and even colonialist expansion, this kind of international order got expanded to other rest of the world, even to the small tribe of the Latin American and Africa. Well, this kind of international order became the order of all human kind of being. Well, I still remember, Henry Kissinger has a book entitled World Orders, and he didn't say world order. He argued that before the 16th century, 17th century, there were different world orders existing in this world, and there one of the orders is the international order, currently used by our kind of a human international community. That does not necessarily mean that is the only right one. That does not necessarily mean that is the only kind of friendly one or safe one. So we should contribute to the international order as we are in this international order, and that is what the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Republic of China has been doing ever since China entered this international order, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, right? So we can say that the Global Development Initiative and the Global Security Initiative actually are the contribution of the Communist Party of China's leadership to better improvement of this international order for more developing countries like China to appreciate, to enjoy these chances and opportunities in the future. So that is the key contribution.
Right, and it's like that China is in the process of pushing common prosperity. Actually, this is also the vision of China globally, to push common prosperity, common development, a shared future for all mankind. You're now watching the special coverage of a new CPC leadership.
We'll come back very soon. Do stay tuned.
Under the strong leadership of the CPC with Xi Jinping at its core, China is moving ahead healthily and steadily. I have met with Mr. Xi Jinping many times. He's a leader of conviction and a vision and has expectational capability. Laos fully supports and has benefited a lot from the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Belt and Road Initiative he has proposed. We believe the 20th CPC National Congress will achieve fruitful results conducive to the construction of socialism with Chinese characteristics, and for China to forge ahead towards its second centenary goal.
China has set long-term strategies with an efficient management system. So I believe that under the leadership of the CPC, China will achieve even more significant development.
Poverty alleviation, as I said, food security, access to vaccines and climate change. China certainly has been at the forefront of this. And we in Dominica have benefited from this support directly from China, and we are very grateful for the assistance.
China has made achievements in such a short period of history as it lifted itself out of absolute poverty. This is exactly what the Communist Party of China has delivered.
In the past 10 years, China has made extraordinary achievements that have attracted worldwide attention. That is why I've chosen the word miracle. President Xi elaborated well on the principle of people first, the relationship between the Communist Party of China and the Chinese people. His theory, echoing the times and answering local needs, meets the realities in China. The principle is to serve the people.
If you look at China's per capita GDP and contribution to the global economy, is much higher than many of the developed countries. And that is deep underlying that is because China believed that China's prosperity is also linked to the rest of the world's prosperity.
All right, you're now watching our special coverage of CPC's new leadership, and you're now watching in the live picture of the Great Hall of People, where the first plenum session of the 20th National Congress of CPC is undergoing, and later on once the result of the new members of the new Standing Committee of Political Bureau of CPC Central Committee is out, they are going to meet the press quite soon, in a few minutes actually.
And for more insights for the upcoming big event, let's go back to our studio guest. And gentlemen, let's remember that as the first plenary session of the 20th CPC National Committee is underway, the very party itself is now operating under an amended party constitution. So we know it's the most fundamental document of the party, stipulating its ideology, principles and conduct. So let's start with the amendment adopted at the 20th CPC National Congress. First and foremost, the Congress unanimously, and I'm quoting, the Congress unanimously agrees that a new development in Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era since the party's 19th National Congress should be incorporated into the party constitution. Professor Xiao, what does this tell about Marxism's development in China nowadays?
Well, it is just one of the important signals of the expansion of the achievement, we can say the achievement of the signification of Marxism, or getting Marxism used to China's context and the needs of the time. And we can realize that there is a real expansion of the essence of the Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, even mentioned in this 20th Congress, National Congress report. Actually, last year, when we studied the third resolution adopted by the 6th plenary session of the 19th Central Committee, we noticed that the essence or the content of the Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics actually consisting of the 10 clarification and the 14 holding on, right? But now, 1 week ago in the 20th report, it has been mentioned that besides the 10 clarification and the 14 holding on, there should be incorporated into the new thought, the 13 achievement ever since the new era. So we can see that this new thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics combines not only theoretical innovation, but also institutional innovation, but also practical innovation. So this means, or this shows that the new thought or the new guiding thought, not only about ideology, not only about how should we think, but also how should we do, how should we practice. Yeah.
And they put some economic factors in the amendments as well. For instance, the common prosperity for all, having an accurate understanding of new stage of development, and philosophy of innovative, coordinated, green, open and shared development, quite in detail, and also high quality development in great details as well. Why should we see so much economic factors in the party constitution, Mr. Gao?
Well, this is because the Communist Party of China is the leading political force in China in all aspects of what we do as a nation, including in particular in the economic sector. Because you may remember, 44 years ago, China's slogan was development is the hard truth. Without economic development, everything becomes empty. Because you really lock yourself in a big ideological box, you'll keep debating about philosophical points. But if you do not have the economic well-being being really developed and enhanced and improved, everything will be empty talk. Therefore, I think CPC, even though the Politburo, which will be elected and announced very soon, is called the Politburo, it is actually very much Politburo as well as Economic Bureau.
Right.
Because it really decides the most important economic and financial policies for example, the overall comprehensive economic development in China. Therefore, CPC is not only political, it is ideological, but it is equally importantly leading the economic initiatives. And also in China, a big country with 1.4 billion population, the economic development need to be done overall in the framework of the national strategy. And the national strategy is not only economic. It, for example, also has energy security issues, environmental considerations, macro-financial considerations, not only development for this generation, but for future generations, the well-beings, for example. All this should be done under the overall leadership role by the CPC. This is really the uniqueness for the China's development.
Right, so it is not only the rights and obligations of the party members, it also draws blueprints for the whole country's development. It's kind of wide spectrum constitution of the CPC indeed. Then what's the role of the constitution? Because everybody should observe this constitution. What's the role of constitution in the whole party?
Well, first of all, the leading cardinal document for the CPC itself is the party constitution. And there are things which will not change. And because the world is changing, China is changing, China's opportunities and challenges are changing. Therefore, the way the CPC does this is that every 5 years there may be amendments to the Constitution. And the purpose of the amendments is to make sure that the Constitution is more reflective of the changing circumstances in China. Because every 5 years, I would say, China's top priorities, while more or less remain in the same direction of reform and opening to the outside world, but every 5 years there are new changes. The relative size of China is changing, and the urgent priorities are changing. Therefore, I think the amendments more or less reflect the changing circumstances within the party, within China, as well as in China's relations with the rest of the world.
Right, and throughout the special coverage so far, we've already covered some content of the amendment to the party constitution. This time, for example, the central tasks for the party in the new era, on a new journey, and the 2 strategic steps to reach the 2nd centenary goal of the party. And having said that, Professor Xia, we noticed that also from the document, it said that new ideas, new thinking and new strategies on national defense, the armed forces, the united front and foreign affairs were also adopted this time. Tell us a little bit more about that. Let's start with national defense.
Well, actually, this shows the expansion of the function of the party constitution. You know, when we look at the party constitution or even the constitution of a state or a charter of an organization, we always argue that that constitution or that charter is more about how this organization should be operated or should be run. It's more like a kind of a manual, right? It's kind of a manual. But with all this content combined or incorporated in the party constitution ever since 20th National Congress, this constitution has become more and more, let's say, energetic. Okay, it incorporated the previous experiences, and it also set the future goal in the future. For example, the national defense, because within a couple of years, China will, or the Chinese army, the People's Liberation Army, will meet its 100th anniversary. So in that kind of, or at that kind of historical date or historical timing, the army or the defense or the national defense of China will be improved and will be further developed in order to function, to fulfill the task of national unification, of national security, state security, because national security has also been expanded to a more comprehensive and a general outlook of national security. So, we can argue that the task becomes more complicated, then, the force that is going to fulfill the task should also be complicated and become stronger and stronger. So that's the national defense. And then even the United Front is also incorporated. The task of United Front is incorporated into the party constitution, because United Front policy actually, this year marks the 100th anniversary of the party mentioned and proposed the United Front concept and strategy. In 1922, the Communist Party of China firstly used the United Front to, mobilize as much as possible the resources that existed in China to fulfill the task of the expansion of Chinese nation. So United Front is not only a platform, is not only a kind of organization, it has become a strategy. It has become a very important tool to combine, to consolidate the society and the regime. So that is my understanding about the expansion and expanded function of the party constitution this year.
Right. Well, the Constitution actually also includes, it not only includes future plans or what the party members should do in the future, it also reflects the past. Because to me, it should go forward with the change of times. And now it adds something of party's history and its obligation for the party members to learn about that period of history. So, okay, we'll continue. Hold your thoughts to that. We're going to continue our discussions and go back to the Great Hall of People, where the new members of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of CPC Central Committee are going to meet the press.
各位记者朋友，各位来宾，大家好。
Friends from the media, distinguished guests, good morning.
今天上午，中国共产党第20届中央委员会召开第1次全体会议，选举产生了新一届中央领导机构。
Earlier today, the 20th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China held its first plenary session and elected the CPC's new central leadership.
我们非常高兴地邀请到新当选的中共中央总书记和各位常委同中外记者见面。
We are delighted to have invited the newly elected General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee and other members of the Political Bureau Standing Committee to meet with Chinese and foreign journalists.
现在，让我们以热烈的掌声欢迎总书记和各位常委。
Now please join me in a warm applause to welcome the General Secretary and other Political Bureau Standing Committee members.
让我们热烈欢迎中共中央总书记习近平同志讲话。
Let us warmly welcome Comrade Xi Jinping, the General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, to deliver remarks.
女士们、先生们、同志们、朋友们，大家好！我也很高兴在这里同各位记者朋友们见面。
Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, good morning. It is a great pleasure to meet friends from the media.
昨天，中国共产党第20次全国代表大会已经胜利闭幕了。这是一次高举旗帜、凝聚力量、团结奋进的大会。
Yesterday, the Communist Party of China successfully concluded its 20th National Congress. It was a congress of holding high our banner, pooling our strength, and forging ahead in unity.
国际社会对中共20大高度的关注，许多国家的政党发来了贺电、贺信，其中很多是国家元首、政府首脑、政党和重要组织机构领导人发来的。在此，我谨代表中共中央致以诚挚的谢意。
The international community has been following the 20th CPC National Congress with great interest. Political parties in many countries have sent congratulatory messages and letters, many of which were from heads of state or government and from leaders of political parties or important organizations. On behalf of the CPC Central Committee, I wish to express our heartfelt appreciation to them all.
刚才我们召开了中共20届一中全会，选举产生了新一届中央领导机构，选举我继续担任中共中央总书记。
Just now, the 20th CPC Central Committee held its first plenary session and elected the new central leadership. I was re-elected as the General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee.
现在我向大家介绍其他6位常委。
Let me present my 6 colleagues who have also been elected to the Political Bureau Standing Committee.
李强同志。
They are Comrade Li Qiang,
赵乐际同志。
Comrade 赵乐际，
王沪宁同志。
Comrade 王沪宁，
蔡奇同志。
Comrade 蔡奇，
丁薛祥同志。
Comrade 丁薛祥，
李希同志。
and Comrade 李希。
他们6位里头呢，赵乐际、王沪宁同志都是19届的中央政治局常委，其他同志呢都是19届中央政治局的委员，大家呢也都比较了解。
Comrade 赵乐际 and Comrade 王沪宁 served on the Political Bureau Standing Committee of the 19th CPC Central Committee. The others, were members of the Political Bureau of the 19th CPC Central Committee. They're all quite familiar to you.
在这里，我代表新一届中共中央领导，衷心感谢全党同志的信任。我们一定牢记党的性质和宗旨，牢记自己的使命和责任，恪尽职守，勤勉工作，绝不辜负党和人民重托。
On behalf of the CPC's new central leadership, I wish to thank the whole party sincerely for the trust you have placed in us. We shall keep in mind the party's nature and purpose and our own mission and responsibility and work diligently in the performance of our duty to prove worthy of the great trust of the party and our people.
经过全党、全国各族人民共同努力，我们如期全面建成小康社会，实现了第一个100年奋斗目标。现在，我们正意气风发，迈上全面建设社会主义现代化国家新征程，向第2个100年奋斗目标进军，以中国式现代化全面推进中华民族伟大复兴。
Thanks to the concerted efforts of the entire party and the Chinese people of all ethnic groups, we have fully established a moderately prosperous society according to plan, thus completing the first centenary goal. Now we are taking confident strides on a new journey to turn China into a modern socialist country in all respects, to advance toward the second centenary goal, and to embrace the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation on all fronts through a Chinese path to modernization.
新征程上，我们要始终保持昂扬奋进的精神状态，全面建设社会主义现代化国家，寄托着中华民族的夙愿和期待，凝结着中国人民的奋斗和汗水。中国式现代化是中国共产党和中国人民长期实践探索的成果，是一项伟大而艰巨的事业。唯其艰巨，所以伟大；唯其艰巨，更显荣光。
On the journey ahead, we should always keep an enterprising spirit. To build a modern socialist country in all respects has been the long-cherished goal and dream of the Chinese nation. To make this happen, the Chinese people have offered sweat and toil. The CPC and our people have sought long and hard to open a Chinese path to modernization. This is a great yet enormous undertaking. The enormity of the task is what makes it great and infinitely glorious.
为了这一事业，无数先辈筚路蓝缕、披荆斩棘，进行了艰苦卓绝的奋斗。我们心中永远铭记着他们的奉献和牺牲。我们要埋头苦干，担当作为，以更加强烈的历史主动精神，推进马克思主义中国化、时代化，不断谱写新时代中国特色社会主义新篇章，奋力实现中华民族伟大复兴的中国梦。
Successive generations of Chinese have dedicated themselves to this worthy cause, and with extraordinary efforts, they have blazed a path from modest beginnings. We should always remember their dedication and sacrifice. For our part, we must forge ahead with resolve and take on more responsibility. We must show greater historical initiative in adapting Marxism to the Chinese context and the needs of the times. Write new chapters in developing socialism with Chinese characteristics in the new era, and strive hard to achieve the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation.
新征程上，我们要始终坚持一切为了人民，一切依靠人民。一路走来，我们仅仅依靠人民，交出了一份又一份载入史册的答卷。面向未来，我们仍然要依靠人民，创造新的历史伟业。
On the journey ahead, we should always act for the people and rely on them in everything we do. To date, we have secured one tremendous achievement after another by relying closely on our people. In the future, we will continue to rely on them in creating new historic achievements.
路道阻且长，行则将至。前进道路上，无论是风高浪急，还是惊涛骇浪，人民永远是我们最坚实的依托，最强大的底气。我们要始终与人民风雨同舟，与人民心心相印，想人民之所想，行人民之所主，不断把人民对美好生活的向往变为现实。
The journey ahead is long and arduous, but with determined steps, we will reach our destination. We will not be daunted by high winds, choppy waters, or even dangerous storms, for the people will always have our back and give us confidence. We will always ride out the storm with our people and stay heart to heart with them. Taking their priorities as ours and acting on their wishes, we will continue the hard work to turn their aspiration for a better life into a living reality.
新征程上，我们要始终推进党的自我革命。一个饱经沧桑而初心不改的党，才能基业长青。一个铸就辉煌来勇于自我革命的党，才能无坚不摧。百年栉风沐雨，淬火成钢。特别是新时代10年革命性锻造，中国共产党更加坚强有力，更加充满活力。
On the journey ahead, we should always press forward with self-imposed reform. A political party can only achieve lasting greatness if it remains committed to its original aspiration, despite the many hardships it has gone through. It can only become invincible if it remains committed to self-reform, even though it has had a glorious past. The revolutionary travails and tempering of the past century, and especially of the first decade of the new era, have made our party stronger and more dynamic.
面对新征程上的新挑战、新考验，我们必须高度警醒，永远保持赶考的清醒和谨慎， 持而不息推进全面从严治党，使百年大党在自我革命中不断焕发蓬勃生机，始终成为中国人民最可靠、最坚强的主心骨。
Confronted with new challenges and tests on the journey ahead, we must remain on high alert and stay sober-minded and prudent, like a student sitting for a never-ending exam. We must not halt our steps in exercising full and rigorous intra-party governance. We must make sure that our century-old party, the biggest in the world, will become ever more vigorous through self-reform and continue to be the strong backbone that the Chinese people can lean on at all times.
新征程上，我们要始终弘扬全人类共同价值。当今世界面临前所未有的挑战，我们历来主张，人类的前途命运应该由世界各国人民来把握和决定。只要共行天下大道，各国就能够和睦相处，合作共赢，携手创造世界的美好未来。
On the journey ahead, we shall always champion the common values of humanity. The world is grappling with unprecedented challenges. We have consistently called on the people of the world to grasp and shape the future and destiny of humanity. When all countries pursue the cause of common good, we can live in harmony, engage in cooperation for mutual benefit, and join hands to create a brighter future for the world.
我们将同各国人民一道，弘扬和平、发展、公平、正义、民主、自由的全人类共同价值，维护世界和平，促进世界发展，持续推动构建人类命运共同体。
We will work with all other peoples to champion humanity's common values of peace, development, equity, justice, democracy, and freedom, to promote global peace and prosperity, and to keep pursuing a shared future for the human community.
中国发展离不开世界，世界发展也需要中国。经过改革开放40多年不懈努力，我们创造了经济快速发展和社会长期稳定两大奇迹。现在，中国经济韧性强、潜力足、回旋余地广、长期向好的基本面不会改变。中国开放的大门只会越来越大。我们将坚定不移全面深化改革开放，坚定不移推动高质量发展，以自身发展为世界创造更多机遇。
Just as China cannot develop in isolation from the world needs China for its development. Through over 40 years of relentless reform and opening up, we have created the twin miracles of fast economic growth and long-term social stability. The Chinese economy has great resilience, potential, and latitude. Its strong fundamentals will not change, and it will remain on a positive trajectory over the long run. China will open its door ever wider. We will be steadfast in deepening reform and opening up across the board, and in pursuing high-quality development. A prosperous China will create many more opportunities for the world.
女士们、先生们、同志们、朋友们，新征程是充满光荣和梦想的远征，蓝图已经绘就，号角已经吹响，我们要踔厉奋发，勇毅前行，努力创造更加灿烂的明天。
Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, China is embarking on a long journey, one filled with glories and dreams. The roadmap has been drawn, and the bugle has been sounded. We must forge ahead with enterprise and fortitude, and endeavor to create an even better future for our country.
几天来，记者朋友们对大会进行了充分报道，向全世界传递中国声音，传播中国共产党主张，使世界的目光注视中国。感谢你们的辛勤工作，大家辛苦了。
Over the past week, our media friends have covered the 20th CPC National Congress extensively. With your help, China's voice and the CPC's views have been heard across the globe, and the world has turned its eyes to China. Thank you for your hard work and a job well done.
欢迎大家多到中国各地去走一走，看一看，客观真实向世界讲好中国故事，讲好中国共产党故事，讲好我们正在经历的新时代的故事。谢谢大家。
We welcome you to visit more places in our country and present to the world unbiased and truthful stories of China, of the CPC, and of the new era we're living in. Thank you.
见面会到此结束，感谢习近平总书记和各位常委，谢谢各位记者朋友，谢谢各位来宾。
With that, we come to the end of this press event. Thank you, General Secretary Xi Jinping and other Political Bureau Standing Committee members. Thank you, friends from the media and our distinguished guests.
Wow. All eyes, I think, were on this indeed. And that was 7 new members of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the 20th National Congress of CPC meeting the media. And they are newly elected by at the first plenary session. This morning's first plenary session of the 20th National Congress of CPC, and Xi Jinping has been re-elected as the General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee. And the first plenary session actually produced a lot more than the election results.
Indeed. The 20th Communist Party of China Central Committee has just held its first plenary session and elected Xi Jinping as the General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee. Xi Jinping presided over the plenum attended by 203 members and 168 alternate members of the CPC Central Committee. The plenum elected members of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and its Standing Committee. Based on the nomination of the Political Bureau Standing Committee, it endorsed members of the Secretariat of the CPC Central Committee and decided on members of the CPC Central Military Commission. It also approved the election of the Secretary, Deputy Secretaries and members of the Standing Committee of the 20th Central Commission for Discipline Inspection.
Right, let's continue our discussion. And Mr. Xia, the new leadership now is officially out and has met the media. So what's your thought on the new leadership, especially under their leadership, where China is going? What's next for them?
Yes. Actually, one of my first impression of this new group leaders, the new leadership, is the combination of continuity and innovation, or we can say the combination of continuity and change. Just like I mentioned in the first of our special coverage, the continuity actually offers the very important origin of legitimacy of the Communist Party of China in terms of the overall governance and overall leadership. And also we have seen the new members, the 4 new members got elected into the Politburo Standing Committee, and they represent the spirit of enterprises. Okay, just like the Mr. Xi's speech, the General Secretary Xi's speech in introducing the kind of what we should do and what we should expect. He said that the spirit, the enterprise spirit, is more important to the future task and the future, let's say, fulfillment. So they represent the leaders or the cadres I just mentioned. What kind of thing they should do. They know what to do and they know how to do, and they have experiences and they know how to face the challenge, and they know how to handle the future, uncharted water, like this kind of thing. So they represented the new spirit and this enterprise spirit. So the innovation is the key. So I have, let's say, confident. I have confidence, and I think in the future this new group of leadership will bring China to a better future, better tomorrow.
And having said that, Professor Gao, how would you interpret the overall importance of the first plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee?
Well, first of all, the first plenary successfully concluded, and the major decisions have been announced. And now I think the whole CPC and all of China and possibly the rest of the world are very quickly doing something, brushing up of their knowledge about these 7 members of the Standing Committee of the Politburo. Fortunately, they are all familiar faces. Why? Let me say, all of them were members of the Politburo in the 19th Party Congress, and 4 of them were originally just members of the Politburo, but now being promoted to the Standing Committee member. 3 of the Standing Committee members were originally Standing Committee members of the 19th Party Congress's Politburo. So there is no new face among this important lineup. Now, the second thing is that these 7 important members will soon get allocated different assignments. Some will be the candidate for the Prime Minister, which will reshuffle in March next year. Some will head the CPPCC, for example. Another will head an MPC. Another one will do the important job of party discipline, for example, and so on and so forth. So I think all of us need to be readjusted to who is doing what in the new lineup of very important positions. Because CPC is not only a party. CPC really is exercising utmost important role in the government, in the military, in the MPC, in the CPPCC, and in almost everything that China is doing as a country. So I hope all the 7 members will have all our best wishes, and then the next 5 years expectations will be more united than ever. And as Professor Xia said, continuity will really be a very important characteristics of the coming 5 years.
Here's a very very basic question for our international audiences, maybe some of domestic audiences as well. They might be curious to know. It's all about choosing the right people to implement the right policies in this leadership, in any leadership actually. So how have they been nominated, elected? How have they become standing here from a candidate? What's the examining process? What's the selecting and electing process?
Allow me to use one example. Mr. Li Qiang. Li Qiang used to be the party secretary of Zhejiang, one of the very important coastal provinces, and then he was the party secretary of Jiangsu province. Then he is the party secretary of Shanghai, the largest metropolis in China. So at least he already had the top executive party positions of 3 major provinces in China. I would say this gives him a lot of track record and experience and exposure to, let's say, foreign businesses and private enterprises and state-owned enterprises of all kinds, and different characteristics of these 3 major local units in China. And I think this is very important, because if we look at other countries, for example, all of a sudden you have someone with no government background being promoted to one of the top positions, and the track record may not be as solid as what we have in China. This is truly meritocracy in its best form, and others have similar experiences. And I will not be surprised if all of them have, for example, local government experiences, central government experiences, government positions versus party positions, for example. And it is this kind of combination of very comprehensive exposure to different positions, different line of businesses within the party, within the government, for example, central government versus local government, and all this gives them the experience and the track record that will be required in doing their more important job going forward for the coming 5 years.
Now let's turn to the remarks made by General Secretary Xi Jinping at the occasion. He mentioned the importance of Chinese modernization, which we also focused on for the past several hours. He said it's pursued by both the party and the Chinese people, and he also admits that this will be an arduous yet great journey for all. Professor Xia, how do you interpret those words for China ahead?
Well, he used the word enormous, enormity, greatness, glory, and the dedication. Forge ahead is kind of a very great words to illustrate the China's path to modernization. And this show that Chinese path to modernization is not a simple kind of work. And Chinese path to modernization is not only or not merely about economic growth, like the GDP annual raise and even the GDP per se, something like that. So if we look at into the real components of the Chinese path to modernization, it encompasses almost everything. It encompasses economics, the politics, the social governance, ecological maintenance, and even international relations, right? So we can see that it is a huge project, and the Communist Party of China with the new leadership becomes an engine. It can provide the continuous, let's say, power to this project, and this power should be, implemented or immediate to the project with the support of the people. So in his analysis or in his depiction, the future project like he mentioned, the outline has been drawn, and the next stage we should do what we're supposed to do. Let's say we just we don't look outside, but we just stick to our principle, and in the future we can get what we expect. So that's my understanding about this huge task and the enormous but great task.
Also, General Secretary Xi Jinping mentioned quite some times on the very word people. For example, he said the party is from the people, and everything it does should be for the people, and that's a principle from the past and will be carried on to the future. What's the key message here?
Well, that represents the very important principle of mass lying, because mass lying is one of the bases of the Communist Party of China and one of the bases for the Leninist political party, and even the Leninist political party that is going to maintain or consolidate its rule for a longer period. So the Communist Party of China should be connected with the people, because with the support of the people, there was the success of revolution, there was the success of socialist construction, there was even the success of reform, and there was even the success of help the party to recorrect its own setbacks and even other kind of, let's say, flaw. So the people is the right force, or is the the only force of the Communist Party of China to forge ahead, to lead the people, to lead the society, to overcome this kind of difficulty. So people is key. People is the source, is the base.
People-centered really has been a key phrase
Yes.
during the whole Congress,
and
especially a great mission for the new leadership as well. It also the party, especially General Secretary Xi Jinping, required the new leadership and also all the party members to grasp the new requirements for the development of the party, and also meet the new expectations of the people especially on the new journey in the new era. It has formulated a lot of programs and plans for China going ahead on the new journey. What are the new requirements are we talking about for the party, and what new expectations and needs of the people?
Well, talking about the people, our country is called the People's Republic of China, and then our central bank is called the People's Bank of China. Even the money we use is called the renminbi. Basically, it means people's money. Is that right? So people really are the bedrock of our country and also of the CPC. Now, people's expectations do change. And 44 years ago, we were fighting off backwardness and poverty, for example. Now we have greater aspirations for a better livelihood. We want to send our kids to better schools. And when we retire, we want to have, better elderly cares, for example. And then 40 years ago, people barely traveled. Now we travel everywhere, within China, overseas, for example, and China is very much connected with the rest of the world. In China, more and more families have their relatives in different parts of the world. There are intermarriages, for example, huge increased exchanges of the people in China with the rest of the world. So all these are new circumstances. And then, allow me to say, 44 years ago, China did not have a lot of overseas oppression or second guessing of China. Because China at that time was smaller, its impact on the world was smaller. Now, there is one particular country and its so-called allies in the West. They are very much second-guessing what China is doing. They really do not want to see our continued economic and peaceful rise, for example. All these are new challenges. So how we can manage the situation, navigate through all these new challenges, and make sure that between China and the rest of the world, especially with the Western world, the relations will be peaceful, will be constructive, and eventually our promotion of the multilateralism will win over. Because I would suppose the majority of the people in the world still want to have peace rather than end up with a war. This is very important. Development on the one hand, domestic development versus international development, and then peace to be promoted and defended, and war to be avoided. All these are new challenges that we are faced with for the coming 5 years.
So talking about challenges, Professor Xia, General Secretary Xi Jinping also mentioned the importance of keep pushing for the self-revolution within the party. What does he mean by that for the near future?
This is a very important point, because challenges are not always outside the party. Challenges happens within the party, within this kind of
and this is the world's largest political party.
Exactly. And in this, actually, in his report, in his speech in the 20th National Congress, we see that he mentioned a lot about the negative impact of the bad behavior, the corruption. We can say that the corruption is not only about doing bad things. Actually, corruption is also about not doing anything, right? Doing bad things we can correct, but not doing anything, we don't know what you think, what you kind of expect. So not doing things and doing bad things are two forms of corrupted behavior. So these are dangerous to the party. These are dangerous to the party's discipline. These are dangerous to the party's project in the future. So, well, that is the challenges. And self-governance, self-improvement, and even self-correctness are key to the final victory, the success.
What do you think, Mr. Gao? How do you think the party can ensure the purity of the party and ensure that its main values can be carried on for generations?
This is a very important question. As a matter of fact, if we look at the CPC history for more than 101 years, at different stages, its top priorities were different. Before 1949, it was a revolutionary party. It was, going to rally the whole country in the war of resistance against Japanese aggression. It was, very much overthrowing the corrupt nationalist government headed by Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek. And then, after 1949, it is building up the economy, it is defending the sovereignty and territorial integrity through the old way of doing things. That is the planned economy, And then, after 1978, China has revolutionarized itself. China has embarked on reform and opening to the outside world, and what we are doing is now called the socialist market economy, and many countries in the West cannot figure out what does it mean, because they seem to put two opposing things together. But this is exactly what's the great about the Chinese revolutionary breakthroughs. And now I think China needs to deal with new challenges. For example, how can China make sure that in the coming 5 to 10 years, the overall size of the Chinese economy will really be the number one in the world? This will have truly profound international consequences. Not every country will be very easy to readjust to this revolutionary landscape change. And then people have second thoughts about this. People think, if you are becoming number one, then what about hegemony? What about the top dog position, for example? What about any impact on the current existing international order? So China needs to really convey its message very clearly to the world. No one can prevent or to take away China's right of peaceful development, but no one should be scared or worried about China playing a role of hegemon or top dog in the world, for example. This requires a higher level of communication skills to the rest of the world. We need to convince ourselves to start with, but also the rest of the world, including the developed world. I think all this will require new skill sets, new background, new experience, new talents, for example, within CPC to start with, but also outside of CPC, because China is this all-comprehensive, all-process democracy. Everyone should be involved in making China greater and better for tomorrow.
And some of those values you just mentioned, Professor Gao, have been enshrined in the amended party constitution adopted by the 20th CPC National Congress. For example, Professor Xia, it says, holding dear humanity's shared values of peace, development, fairness, justice, democracy, and freedom. And this, all these values have been reiterated by General Secretary Xi Jinping at that press conference we just witnessed. What is the key signal here from the CPC to the world, telling the rest of the world what the CPC is going to do?
Well, actually, General Secretary Xi Jinping, also President Xi Jinping, has been telling to the rest of the world that this is the common value of the entire human being, of the mankind. Ever since 2015, he attended this United Nations Assembly in 2015, and in that year, he made a speech in New York and in the United Nations. He said that this justice and the development and peace and the rights, the democracy and freedom, these things are common values shared by all the people. However, he also mentioned that last year, right after the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party of China, he attended a kind of the video discussion with the world political party leaders. He urged these political leaders that we should, on the one hand, respect and accept the this shared value or common value. On the other hand, we should also recognize and respect that the different countries, the different societies, and different communities should have their own reality, should have their own choice of their paths to realize the value. For example, the democracy. For example, the human rights. Right? You cannot have a one, rigid, definition of this democracy for all the countries of the world to adopt. That is against the democratic spirit in itself per se. So if we want to pursue, if we want to, appreciate this shared value, we should welcome and we should encourage all the civilization to experience, to realize this value on their own path or by their own condition, with their own choice.
It's getting more and more difficult nowadays,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes,
but China has always hoping or visioning of a shared future for all mankind, yes. And it's getting very hard in these choppy waters of the world. So, Mr. Gao, how do you see that ideology going forward in today's world?
Well, first of all, I think the 20th Party Congress for the past week and today's first plenary session of the new Central Committee are real examples, live examples for the whole world to see that China is a democracy. Even within the Communist Party of China, there is a democratic tradition of elections and vetting, and of all the candidates,
the whole process
etc.
of how
the whole process.
The members of the Central Committee and members of the Standing Committee of the Political Bureau have been reviewed.
Exactly. And I hope all this will prove that China is practicing democracy with Chinese characteristics. Our democratic system is very different from the Western countries, for
people's
example.
Democracy.
Exactly.
Right.
However, I would say no country can hold itself out as if it has a monopoly of democracy, which can be applicable to all the countries regardless of different circumstances. I think the Chinese people are convinced that whatever the democratic system we have is the best solution for dealing with the Chinese challenges and circumstances. And we want to stick to this one. We want to develop this. We want to grow our democracy with Chinese characteristics. However, on the other hand, we also want to emphasize to the whole world, there is no desire and no need for China to impose our way of democracy with Chinese characteristics onto anyone else. Because what works for China may not work for any other country. And this is the same spirit that we are firmly opposed to any other country which wants to impose their democracy or their way of doing business onto the Chinese people. We want to do things our way, and we respect every country, their way of doing things.
Is not the answer to the change
Right.
of times. And Professor Xia, very quickly, let's touch upon General Secretary Xi Jinping's remarks at a press conference on China's economic outlook. Do you think that's kind of a confidence boost to the country and even to the rest of the world?
Yes, of course. Actually, General Secretary Xi Jinping just now has given two important signals to the outside world about China's economic development. And he said, on the one hand, China's basic, let's say, situation will remain the same. That is to say, the basic or the fundamental economic system will remain, will not be changed. For example, the public ownership and also respect the private ownership, right? And also China, the openness of China, the scale and let's say the degree will be become larger and larger and broader and broader, this kind of thing. So that is the signal of confidence not only to Chinese people, Chinese businessmen, but also to the rest of the world. So doing business, doing trade, and China will open, larger and larger. That is the very strong signal. And in the immediate future, I hope that strong signal can trigger some kind of change in the economic situation.
Thank you very much, Professor Xia Lu and Professor Victor Gao there.
Right. Thank you very much for insight.
Members of the new Standing Committee of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee have met press and have been introduced to the public. They were elected at the first plenary session of the 20th CPC Central Committee.
Right, and the Political Bureau and its Standing Committee will exercise the functions and also powers of the CPC Central Committee between the plenary sessions as well.
Now, the CPC has set off on a new journey for the goal to build a modern socialist country in all respects and afford a great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation.
And the party also says it will break a new ground and forge ahead and make more spectacular achievements for China and its people.
Thank you very much for joining us on this special coverage. I'm Pan Dong in Beijing.
And I'm Li Dongming. Thanks for watching our special coverage of the new CPC leadership.
Stay tuned.